So how are you guys? I am back again with a very fun and exciting new video, which is, what if Izuku became extraordinarily powerful by mastering every quirk? Before part 1 started, do like, share and subscribe to the channel and comment down your favorite part. Your one like and one subscribe motivate me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. So without any waste of time, now let's start the fanfic. Quirkless. If you look at the bone on his foot here. The doctor's callous words droned on, but his voice failed to reach Izuku Midoriya's ears. The world suddenly seemed to shift to grayscale. Quirkless, 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 quirkless. The word repeated itself in his mind. Every time Izuku heard it, it seemed to be said in a different person's voice. First, it was the doctor's methodical tone. Then, Izuku heard Kacchan's snarl, the voices of his classmates, but worst of all was his mother's voice. Her apologetic tone tore away at him. Quirkless. But, it's strange. Are you sure that this, Kacchan, person attacked you with fire? Your arm seems perfectly fine. Izuku numbly nodded, and the doctor hummed. It was obvious that he didn't believe him. Later that night, his mom called him for dinner. As he numbly sat down, she tried to reassure him. Izuku, honey, Mom. It's fine, he said flatly. She shot him a worried look. Are you sure? I know how much being a hero meant to you. I'd hate to see that dream shattered before it even began. She bit her lip, not quite knowing what to say. Mom, he repeated, it's fine. His voice, faltering, continued. I'm still going to apply to UA. Couldn't hurt to at least try, right? Droplets of tears hit his closed palms. Izuku hurriedly wiped his traitorous eyes with the back of his hands. I'm going to become a hero, Mom. Just you watch. The smile that grew on his face was offset by the tears gushing out of his eyes. Inko Midoriya, unable to stand the sight of her crying son any longer, threw her arms around her baby boy and bit back tears of her own. At the age of 13, in order to pursue his dream of being a hero, Izuku signed up for mixed martial arts. He ignored the taunts of his classmates and soldiered on with the sole goal of getting into UA. And it was there, during training, that Izuku entertained the possibility that he might have a quirk. It seemed that, regardless of how many punches or kicks he received, his body remained in perfect condition. He still felt the pain, but whether or not it registered on his body was debatable. Bruises or cuts only appeared on his body after being knocked out or sleeping. He guessed that, somehow, physical damage was intrinsically connected to his mental capacity or capabilities. The more he thought about it as he trained, the more obvious the disconnect between his body and his mind became. It got to the point where Izuku could pick when his body received damage. If he took a body shot, he could choose to allow the blow to physically damage him or to receive all the damage mentally. It hurt a lot less when he allowed the impact to reach his body, but as long as his mind held up, Izuku's body became impervious. But Izuku found it difficult to actually ascertain whether or not he had a quirk. He couldn't blow anything up or conjure fire. It was entirely possible that his body was just incredibly sturdy. But, regardless, this made him a terrifying duelist. There was nothing more disheartening to his opponent than landing a solid blow that appeared to have no effect. Since he was small for his age, Izuku relied more heavily on speed than strength. His punches flew quickly, his kicks light and accurate, but they didn't have much power behind them. He wore down the other opponents his age by sheer tenacity rather than knockouts. He steadily rose the ranks at the dojo. As the days went on, his form improved. Izuku collected more and more victories under his belt, but it was never enough to offset the fact that he was quirkless. The matches were all deemed no quirk usage, sure, but in the real world, Izuku knew it was different, that villains didn't care for being fair, that being quirkless was a massive disadvantage. He spent a year like that, fighting and training to grow faster, stronger. Izuku certainly grew more muscular, growing into a lean body devoid of baby fat, but he knew that it wasn't enough. It was one day, after training, that everything changed. It was still all a blur to him. The sludge villain, All Might, yes, All Might, rescuing him. Getting his dream ruthlessly crushed, being told that, no matter what, a quirkless individual would be better off being something like a cop rather than a hero, walking home, the sludge villain again but this time with Katsuki. He may have his differences with the boy, but Izuku wasn't one to stand by as his friend was being attacked. So he leapt into the fray, striking at whatever sludge he could, but his hits were all absorbed. All Might saving him, again. All Might acknowledging him. All Might offering him his power, a chance to be a hero. It was like a dream. Izuku couldn't believe his luck. He wanted to scream until his lungs gave out in jubilation. He was given a chance from the number one hero, and he wasn't going to waste it. So, like he'd been instructed, after school ended he arrived at the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park to begin his training. He told his sensei at the dojo that he was going to bulk up before returning. Izuku arrived at the beachfront to find a literal dumpster. Mountains of garbage stared down at him to the point that he could barely see any sand. Flabbergasted, he looked around to find All Might. He found him seated at an alcove of trash. "This used to be a beautiful beach," All Might said, not even bothering to greet Izuku. The man was in his skeletal form, looking out forlornly at the mess the beach had become. But now, due to negligence, it has become this. Izuku followed his gaze to the giant heaps of trash. "No matter," All Might shouted suddenly, clapping his knees with his hands and getting up. "We're gonna fix this beach up. This is the beginning of your training, young man, clean up this beach." Izuku's mind reeled at the sheer enormity of the task laid out before him, but at the same time, a competitive flare was lit inside of him. "Say where, and I'll move him there." "Excellent." All Might laughed, patting Izuku on the back. "That's the spirit. Now, all you need to do is..." For the next half hour, All Might explained his training regiment. First stage, bodybuilding, clean up all the trash on the beach, dump them into a trash collection zone, and gain muscles while doing so. That will form the baseline for his abilities. Then the second stage, more bodybuilding. Hit the gym every day, following strict guidelines for further strengthening. Once he got to a certain point that All Might felt was satisfactory, he would get to inherit his quirk, one for all. Then, leading up to UA's entrance exams, Izuku would undergo any necessary quirk strengthening and address any potential unexpected shortcomings. With the plan formulated, Izuku got down to business. About a month into his beach cleanup, Izuku started noticing a strange pattern. A lone girl stood at the furthest point where garbage met the sea. Her blonde hair, messily curled up into two buns, glinted in the dying sunlight. She walked along the shoreline, absent-mindedly kicking stray cans. She caught him staring and looked at him with wide, unblinking eyes before huffing and returning to her own world. Her presence was unsettling to Izuku. Aside from All Might, who dropped by in his skeletal form every Tuesday and Friday, she was the only person within a 500-meter radius of the dirty beach. They didn't greet each other, but Izuku starting to take her presence for granted. There was something comforting about not being alone in his arduous task. It was silly, sure, but he found a certain companionship with this mystery girl. She was there, playing on the beach, pretty much every day in the afternoon when he worked on cleaning up the beach. She didn't look that much older than him, maybe 16, 17. He couldn't imagine her being older than that. But even then, with her continued presence, he couldn't bring himself to talk to her. Call it nerves or whatever, but he just wasn't ready for that level of interaction. Or so he told himself, at least. It was the second month of cleaning up when contact was made. He'd just been watching the girl play with some sharp metal when a sudden idea cropped up in his mind. He tried testing out if he had a legit quirk or not by cutting himself with some of the leftover garbage and found that, if he clenched his abs, the razor-sharp metal would not cut his arm, but if he relaxed and willed himself to be cut, sure enough, the material pierced skin and a warm trickle of blood flowed out. The damage done was perplexing to him. Could clenching his abs be some sort of hidden trigger to trigger a sort of invulnerability, or was it just clenching any muscle? Was it a fluke? Izuku had been told that scientifically, it was impossible for him to have a quirk, yet here he was, displaying quirk-like levels of an ability. "Hello." Izuku, not expecting the sudden interaction, yelped and dropped the bloody shard of glass he was holding on to. She looked forlornly at the dropped glass before giggling cutely. "Hi there. Hello." Izuku stuttered, still caught off guard. Didn't see you there, sorry." "Oh tilde," she drawled, taking a seat on top of a nearby microwave, "even though you couldn't take your eyes off of me earlier tilde." Izuku flushed a deep crimson. He tried denying it, but the girl was having none of it, stifling a chuckle with her arm sleeve. The high school uniform was baggy on her, but it carried a certain undeniable charm to it. So, she continued after her airy laughs, what are you doing here? Izuku took a deep breath. He can do this. He can talk to a girl without making an absolute fool out of himself. I'm cleaning up the beach. All by yourself. Why yeah. An uncomfortable silence lingered in the air between them. Izuku desperately racked his brain for something to say, mentally drawing a blank. She watched him flounder with a cat-like grin, the grin only growing wider as time passed. So, Izuku mumbled, still desperately searching for an icebreaker, The girl just watched him, patiently waiting. What's your name? He finally breathed out, like an enormous weight was lifted off of his chest. Himiko Toga, she responded, grin turning into a full-blown smile. It's a pleasure to meet you. She laughed. Oh please, we met a long time ago Tilda. As Izuku racked his brain for memories, she stood up and snaked closer to him. I'm sorry, Toga, but I can't seem to. Himiko, she interrupted, eyes drawn to the small gash on his arm. Call me Himiko, Izuku. In his flustered state, it slipped his mind that he never told her his name. Himiko, Izuku mumbled, flushing a shade of red that was oddly reminiscent of a tomato. Anyways, I can't seem to recall. I don't blame you for forgetting Tilda, she said cheerily, still staring at the cut. He finally noticed and flushed a deeper shade of red, if it was even possible at that point. Sorry, I was just testing something. It's all right. Himiko pulled out a handkerchief. Want me to clean it for you? Oh. Izuku glanced at her shyly before looking away. Yeah, sure, that'd be helpful. She gently rubbed his bloody arm, moving back and forth in smooth circles. When she was done and the blood was cleaned up, she did something that honestly scared the living crap out of him. She licked the bloody handkerchief. What are you? Wanna see something cool? Himiko grinned, and, not waiting for his response, she transformed into him. A beat passed. Hoa! Izuku shouted, staring at not Izuku but somehow still Izuku. His earlier fright was replaced by an insatiable curiosity. Is that your quirk? Some kind of transformation type? I wonder if everything got copied, to what extent does it copy my body? Do you have a— No, I shouldn't be asking a lady that question, he continued to mumble under his breath as the girl opposite him just smiled wider. Izuku couldn't quite place his finger on it, but this whole interaction felt familiar. He shrugged it off. If he'd talked to a pretty girl like Himiko before, he'd definitely remember it. Shish, she shushed playfully, holding up a finger to his mouth. He blushed at the contact, which only made her laugh more. It's lonely, isn't it? Cleaning the beach by yourself. Here, let me help Tilda. Oh, no, I can't let you do that, he said. It's my task to clean up this beach, sorry. She blinked, surprised, but settled into an easy grin. All right, if you say so Tilda, but at least let me keep you company. That would be nice, he acquiesced, flushing. I must warn you though, I'm not exactly the most engaging company. Stupid Izuku. Why had he gone and said that? It's fine, she laughed. It'll be fun, just you and I. And it was fun. For the next couple of weeks, months, Himiko showed up when he was collecting trash throughout the weekday. On the weekends, her absence was noted, but that only made Izuku look forward to her presence on the upcoming Monday. She hung back when All Might checked in on him, but otherwise, she was by his side, chatting non-stop about her day. She apparently went to Shiketsu High on the opposite end of town. It was roughly equal in terms of ranking to Aldera High, where he attended high school, and he was shocked to find that she was in the same grade as him, 9th. When he told her his dream of attending UA University, she furrowed her brow but surprised him when she said she was dreaming of applying to the general course there. It also shocked him to hear that she lived alone. As a mama's boy through and through, it was hard to imagine living without family. She seemed fine, but he still invited her over for dinner before blushing and realizing the implications of him doing so. She giggled and teased him about it, but ultimately she declined, stating that she had no idea how to behave in front of adults. He got into a routine. Wake up, go to school, go to Dagoba Beach, meet up with Himiko or touch base with All Might, go home, and sleep. Wake up and repeat. School was fairly boring, he got top grades without having to try too hard, so the real highlight of his day was cleaning the beach in Himiko's or All Might's company. Regardless of the fact that Himiko was a girl, and an attractive one at that, Izuku was glad to have someone he could finally call friend. It was at the end of the school year that he finally finished cleaning up the beach. As he lugged that final piece of garbage into the trash collection zone, he felt an overwhelming sense of pride and accomplishment as he stared at the now clean beach. Although with the pride there came an increasing sense of apprehension as he thought about Himiko. With the beach clean, they wouldn't have an opportunity or an excuse to meet up anymore. In an uncharacteristic display of confidence, Izuku asked for her number. Although there were many ums and ahs, perhaps more so than actual words themselves, he got the deed done and got her cell. With a promise to text her, he eagerly awaited for All Might's arrival. Wow. All Might whistled, appreciating the pristine sandy view before him. You really got it done. Well, of course I did, Izuku huffed, a bit indignant. You told me to do it after all. All Might grinned. That's what I like to hear. Young man, rejoice. Your first heroic act. Izuku looked away. He definitely was not tearing up right now, yeah. All Might noticed the state he was in and clapped a comforting hand to his shoulder. Be proud. Now that this beach has been restored, look. People are once again enjoying it. It was true, people have been taking note of the mysterious Dagoba clean-up and the beach slowly repopulated. But do not grow complacent. Your training has only just begun. A fire lit in Izuku's eyes. I wouldn't have it any other way. Izuku stood, for the first time, on UA University's campus. He gazed at the buildings, filled with childlike wonder at being on campus at his dream school. People passed him by, exiting class as he searched for All Might, Toshinori-sensei. He remembered that, in order to preserve All Might's secret, he was to call the blonde man by his name, Yagi Toshinori. It honored him to know that his hero trusted him to the extent of telling him his civilian name. Said man was escorting him to their state-of-the-art weight rooms. Some students spared the two a curious glance, but otherwise, they were mainly ignored. Izuku took that as a blessing. Since All Might was in his deflated state, he didn't receive much attention either. Once they arrived, Izuku couldn't help but marvel at the cutting-edge technology that graced his eyes. First off, the weight room was massive, easily quadrupling his high school's now seemingly tiny weight room. Stations for different exercises were set up all around the room. He spotted filled-out racks for back squats, front squats, RDLs, bench press, and more. Some of the contraptions he had never seen before, and using them for their intended purpose would be an exercise in frivolity at best. Now, Izuku, All Might started, glancing down at the teen beside him. He looked like an excited kid at a candy store. Let's set up some goals to attain, shall we? Izuku's attention snapped to All Might. Yes, sir. The man said, let's start with the basics. Hit 250 pounds bench press and 400 pounds back squat. That's what I could do at your age. And you told me before that you were learning martial arts at a nearby dojo, correct? When Izuku nodded in the affirmative, All Might continued, good. We'll lift on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and you'll learn at the dojo on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Sundays can be spent however you want. You are a growing boy, after all, hee. Izuku had a dim feeling that All Might peeped on him and Himiko's time together more than once, but the gratefulness for a rest day outweighed his salt. He said, thanks for that, I guess. All Might laughed boisterously, slapping Izuku on the back. Now I'll be coaching you when you're here, so be sure to arrive on time. But knowing your work ethic, it'll probably be you waiting for me. All Might's words rang true like he was a prophet. On most days, he spotted Izuku waiting for him by UA's entrance, the boy looking like he'd waited for quite some time. Each time he greeted him with the most blinding smile that All Might had ever seen. Well, if his words are to be trusted, All Might thought, he's looked up to me ever since he was a kid. This must be a dream come true for him. Better not let him down then. On the odd days of the week, Izuku returned to training at the dojo. The trainers there were all surprised to see him, stating that Izuku made good on his promise to return after bulking up a bit. While not at the point of having a physique like a bodybuilder, Izuku had noticeably filled out and gained a few pounds of solid muscle. The hours of cleaning up the beach also increased his stamina by a fair amount, and the extra muscles meant that his blows now finally began to pack a punch. On the even days of the week, Izuku had the honor of being personally trained by All Might. He spotted his reps, instructed him proper technique and form, and overall just acted like a direct mentor to him. He was ecstatic to have the rare opportunity of having All Might, of all people, be a personal trainer, and each day he pushed himself to the limit and beyond. It was strange, though. After lifting he'd feel pretty sore, but come the next day and after sparring in the dojo for no short period of time, he didn't feel sore at all. It took him some time to work up the courage to do so, but finally, one day after lifting, Izuku braved the unknown and shot Himiko a text. "Izuku, hello, this is Izuku Midoriya. Am I talking to Himiko Toga?" He put his phone in his pocket, got on the bus on the way home, and checked his phone nervously. To his shock and absolute delight, he'd received a text. "Himiko, lol. Himiko, even over text are so serious. Himiko, it's cute." Izuku flushed hard and put his phone in his pocket, taking a few deep breaths. She wasn't even near him. He could do this. He whipped his phone back out. "Izuku, sorry. Izuku, anyways, I was just wondering if you would be down to hang this Sunday." He didn't even get a chance to put his phone away before Himiko responded. "Himiko, I'd love to. Himiko, where? Himiko, when? Himiko, why?" Izuku gave it some thought before responding. "Izuku, Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, 11 a.m. sounds good." "Himiko, ooh, sounds good. Himiko, should I bring a bikini winking face?" Izuku allowed the mental image of Himiko in a bikini toy with his emotions for a bit before shaking his head, clearing his mind of any impurities. Did he want to go in the water? Dagoba Beach had become a tourist attraction again, so there were food stalls and stands near the beach again. Perhaps they could do that. "Izuku, it's up to you if we go into the water or not, I'll pack for both." "Himiko, I'll take that as a yes then." The image returned in full force, causing Izuku to put his phone away and glare at nothing in particular. Sunday came, and with it came good weather perfect for a beach excursion. Izuku stood on the beach front, nervously watching his phone. 10:38. There would still be some time before Himiko showed up, but that didn't lessen Izuku's nerves a bit. He was dressed in a dark green hoodie, white t-shirt, and light green board shorts, ready to both play in the water or walk along the new boardwalk. Izuku ... Out of nowhere, a person glomped him from behind. He gave a startled screech, which only served to amuse the person even more, before realizing the identity of the person hugging him. "Himiko, you scared me," Izuku muttered, face rapidly heating up at the twin soft sensations on his back. "Sorry," the girl sang, squeezing him even tighter. "And here I thought you forgot about Lil, old me." "Wah, what?" Izuku blanched, face still red. "I could never forget about you. HMPH. With that noise, she let him go, spinning him around so he was facing her. "You know what a girl likes to hear." He wanted to respond but his comeback immediately died in his throat. She was wearing it, a bikini. And it looked better on her than even in his wildest imaginations. The black material clung to her curves, accentuating her fairly large bust and shapely bottom. And, her legs, her creamy thighs glistened in the morning sun, giving off an ethereal shine. "Okay, Izuku. Get it together," he admonished himself. Himiko must have noticed his silence and staring because she giggled and did a twirl, spinning on one foot before coming down. "Like what you see," she smiled, showing off her pearly whites. Izuku didn't respond, only turning his head to the side and staring pointedly at anything not Himiko. "I'll take that blush as a yes tilde." The day passed like that, Himiko flirting with him just to rile him up and get reactions. It was hell for Izuku, but it was also a sort of twisted heaven for him, like, maybe it was enjoyable, getting teased so relentlessly. He wondered if he had masochistic tendencies. Case in point, Himiko and Izuku were lying on the beach, carelessly lapping away at their ice cream cones, when Himiko suddenly yelped. Izuku hurriedly looked over to see what was wrong, only to be shocked to find that a large portion of Himiko's strawberry ice cream had fallen between her mounds. "Yeah." She looked at him, and she got up and all but pushed her breasts in front of him, offering a deceptively innocent, "Get it for me." Izuku melted right there and then. Himiko giggled and stood. I'll go get some napkins to clean up. Do think of me when I'm gone, please Tilda. As she walked off, Izuku slowly recovered from his previous mental meltdown. He had to get his mind out of the gutter, but it didn't really help that Himiko seemed to want it to be stuck there. He sat there, finishing his ice cream cone and counting down the minutes until Himiko returned. The problem was, she wasn't returning. 5 minutes passed, and Izuku counted it as a fluke. 10 minutes passed, and Izuku got worried. He was sure that Himiko could take care of herself, but what if? He stood up and started searching. The market and stands were full of life, which made searching for her harder, but ultimately he found that she was not there. The beach volleyball courts weren't any better. Just as he was about to panic, he spotted a mess of blonde hair by the public restrooms and rushed there. He found Himiko surrounded by 3 guys. She looked perfectly at ease, but the 3 men didn't seem like they were going to let her leave anytime soon. Izuku took a deep breath and hurled himself into the frying pan. Himiko, so this is where you were, Izuku said, letting some genuine relief seep into his voice. Come on, let's go. The girl turned towards him, surprised, but quickly settled into an easy grin. Izuku. She proceeded to glomp him, and Izuku fought back a creeping blush. See, I told you guys, my boyfriend's here, so leave me alone. The guys grumbled and stalked off. Himiko's surprisingly cold tone left little room for argument. Thankful that he managed to avoid any further confrontation, Izuku finally allowed the words she said to register in his mind before going full tomato. BB boyfriend. Oh, Himiko said, checking to make sure the guys were out of earshot. Just a lie, I told them to get them off my case. Ah, I see. Izuku was one part relieved but also one part disappointed. He crushed the disappointed feeling down relentlessly. But, she grinned, I'd like to be able to call you that soon Tilda. Izuku's face couldn't get redder, but he recognized, in his heart, that she was just teasing. I'm not kidding, by the way, Himiko said, voice suddenly flat and serious. I'm seriously aiming to be your girlfriend. I know you're not ready for that level of commitment, but I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. Just wanted you to know, that's all. Izuku opened and closed his mouth, gaping like a fish. He didn't know what to say. Or how to react, even. Was he supposed to cry? He felt like crying right now, out of sheer joy or fright, he didn't know. She grabbed and hugged his arm, laughing at his reaction. Just wanted you to know Tilda, she repeated, smiling up at him. Their little excursion took on a different meaning after that exchange. Now, Izuku idly wondered if he was on a date, of all things. The thought didn't fill him with as much dread as he'd thought it would. Instead, it made him feel giddy. Excited, even. He was on a date with a pretty girl. Never in his years of life did he think that he'd have a chance to do such a thing. The rest of the day was spent in the pursuit of pure fun. They entered an on-site beach volleyball tournament, but lost in the finals to a girl in a long, black spiky ponytail and her friend. That being the case, they did better than Izuku expected since he'd never played volleyball in his life before. Himiko actually carried the team, showcasing an incredible display of athleticism, her movements pinpoint precise and not wasting any unneeded energy. She moved across the sand far more deftly than Izuku could. After the tournament, they decided to actually go in the sea. They played around in the ocean for a bit, body surfing and building honestly crappy sandcastles. When they got out, Himiko shivered, and Izuku, not missing a beat, offered her his hoodie. She accepted with a cute squeal, "Oh my gosh thank you," before slipping it on. The hoodie was just too big on her, but that made her all the more adorable in Izuku's eyes. It was dark when they parted. Izuku offered to walk her home, but she declined, stating that she had somewhere to be after. While her hurried denial was a bit strange, he decided not to press, letting her go after a shy hug. As he was walking home, his phone buzzed. He opened it to find messages and a picture from Himiko. It was of her warm and bundled up in his hoodie, offering a sly grin to the camera. Himiko, I love it. Himiko, hey Izuku. Himiko, can I keep it? What followed after were a barrage of pouting emoticons. Izuku chuckled softly before responding. Izuku, yeah, you can keep it. Consider it a gift. He almost typed for our first date in there but left it out. It was a bit too bold to just assume that. Himiko, that was a wonderful first date smiley face. Izuku overheated. On Izuku's 15th birthday, it finally happened. He maxed 275 pounds bench press, surpassing the original goal, and finally maxed 400 pounds back squat. It took a few months, but here he was, another milestone crossed. He was ready to receive All Might's power, to become a bearer of One for All. All the years of bullying, of being trotted on for not having a quirk, it had all led up to this moment. For once, Izuku believed that it was worth it, having undergone all that bullying, to receive this quirk. They were standing where his training started, Dagoba Beach. As the sun set and people milled about, a kid's whole world was about to change. "Ah, kid," the skeletal form of All Might asked, cutting into his reverie. "Do you still want to do this, or?" "Yes," Izuku said, resolutely. He was not about to let his dream pass him by like that. "Whatever it takes for me to become your successor, I'll do it." "Good," All Might said, reaching up to his head. He plucked out a strand of hair. "Now eat it." Izuku paused. What? I could have sworn that you just told me to eat it." Okay, Izuku backpedaled. He stared at the offending strand of hair. "I'll eat it, yup." He took it in his hand. The hair was stiff. He wondered if there was a better way to do it. All Might, noticing his trepidation, said, "You have to ingest some of my DNA for the transfer to work. I also have to will it to transfer to you, if that makes sense." "All right," Izuku grunted. He held it up to his mouth. "Well, here goes nothing." He swallowed the hair in one gulp, not even bothering to chew or taste the hair. He felt it travel down into his stomach, where it thrummed with power. Unable to hold back his excitement, Izuku willed it to digest faster. Or at least tried. "Let it digest," All Might instructed. "Then, my power shall become yours. It should take roughly a day too. I feel it. As I was saying, it should take." Izuku cocked his arm back, green tendrils of electricity warping around his arm, and unleashed a punch at the air. The punch created wide shockwaves from the displaced air, tearing up the beachfront, umbrellas flying everywhere. The sheer force of the blow caused Izuku to slide backwards, stumbling a bit. It hurt, a lot, but his arm appeared to be fine. All Might's jaw dropped. He looked at Izuku, blinking twice before saying, "Can you do it again?" Izuku cocked back his left arm this time, willing One for All into his left limb. Green electricity coiled around his arm again, and with a shout of, "SMAAASH. Let it fly forth." The result was the same as the first time. Wide shockwaves, sand flying everywhere. A few beach-goers noticed the manic duo and quickly evacuated the area. Again, he punched the air again, generating another massive shockwave. This time, all people in the area promptly left, citing a crazed duo for wreaking havoc on the beach. Again, Izuku punched one more time and was about to follow up with a combo when he noticed a slight pain in his right arm. He looked down and was greeted with a purple appendage hanging loosely at his side. All Might, wondering why he wasn't punching more, followed his gaze and set his sight on the slightly bloody arm. A beat passed. A searing pain began to spread throughout his right side, knocking him down to a knee, barely able to retain consciousness. All Might, spitting blood, quickly cradled him in his arms and took him to a truck with American decals on it, promptly driving him not to a hospital but to UA. When they arrived on campus, All Might haphazardly left his truck on the side of the road and carried Izuku to Recovery Girl's office. They got a lot of strange looks on their way up, but All Might paid them no attention, hurrying to see that his protege was taken care of. "Ah, Toshinori, to what do I owe the pleasure of?" Recovery Girl looked at the boy in All Might's arms. "For the love of God, what happened?" "I'll explain later," All Might dismissed. "Can you just make sure?" Yeah, I got it," Recovery Girl huffed. "Can you just place him, air?" All Might gingerly laid Izuku down on a raised bedrest. The boy looked shaken, but he didn't seem to be in any pain. He was breathing in deep, controlled breaths. Recovery Girl kissed the wounded appendage, saying, "It should be better soon." Meanwhile, she glared at All Might. "You and I are going to have a nice little chat." "Excuse us, boy." Izuku watched as Recovery Girl all but dragged All Might to an adjacent room. Then came the worrisome sounds of muffled shouting. Recovery Girl was probably scolding All Might, then silence. A few minutes later, All Might shuffled into the room, followed by a displeased-looking recovery girl. Recovery girl walked to Izuku and gingerly touched his broken arm. With a tisk sound, she said, "Young man, you're going to have to let the medicine work. Nothing will heal if you freeze your body with your quirk like that." Izuku stared at her, wide-eyed. But, my quirk is one for your other quirk, stupid." A silence passed over the room. Izuku and All Might stared at recovery girl, both equally slack-jawed. Am I the only one seeing this? Kid, you have your body frozen. From the moment you stepped into this room, your situation has neither deteriorated nor improved. You're stuck in limbo, so to speak. Looking at both of their non-existent reactions, recovery girl smacked her face. Look, she said, relax. Allow the medicine to take effect. It will be painful, yes, but it's the only road to recovery. Izuku took her words to heart. Taking a deep breath, he relaxed his wound-up muscles. Immediately, the pain-free state he was in vanished and was replaced by an agonizing state of existence. He cried out in pain, causing All Might to jump and leap to his side. He's fine, Toshinori, recovery girl said, watching the events unfold. His body probably went into protection mode with the injury. Look, now that his quirk's effects are gone, the arm can finally start healing. She watched the two as she pondered over her own findings. The boy didn't seem like he believed he had a quirk separate from Toshinori's. That was confusing in and of itself, unless… Toshinori, I'm going to have to ask you to step out for a moment. I want to run a few tests. All Might seemed hesitant, but he ultimately relented, leaving the room. Seeing him leave, recovery girl got to work. Recovery girl had All Might sit down in her office. To start, she said bluntly, Izuku has a quirk separate from yours. All Might responded indignantly, but he's always said he was quirkless. And Izuku didn't seem like the type to lie to him or hide things from him. I'll get to that eventually, recovery girl sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose, but first, let's address his quirk. It appears to be some sort of invulnerability. The scope of it is unknown, but it appears to fail after 3 usages of One for All. He can control it, too. Before All Might could butt in, recovery girl continued, I tested this with a needle. First I told him to resist it with everything he's got, and I tried sticking it in after. It was like poking a rock. But after I told him to fully relax and poked him, the needle went in. My guess is this is what's happened. Izuku, while unleashing One for All, has this quirk running damage control on his body. In other words, he's essentially locking his muscles in their 100% state while activating One for All, but this quirk can only take so much strain before it fails. In this case, the third punch went overboard, and he got hurt when his quirk failed to protect him. All Might nodded dumbly at the info dump. Seeing his dumbfounded look, recovery girl sighed again. If he's going to want to use One for All, he's gotta learn how to take it in smaller doses. Maybe have him start off with 5% of it or something. That, coupled with his own quirk for mitigating the damage done to his own body, should allow him to use it consistently and for longer periods of time. Alright, All Might relented, I'll take your advice. So tell me, then, why this boy thought he was quirkless. Well, to be fair, it's not the easiest quirk to detect, recovery girl admitted. But that's not it. I had an X-ray done on his feet. Toshinori, the boy only had 2 joints on his pinky toes. You know as well as I do what that means. The man started to pale. And no, it must be a fluke or something. No, she said firmly. A fluke doesn't just happen like that. Not when there are billions of samples to collect data from, all pointing to the fact that it's scientifically impossible for someone with only 2 joints to have a quirk. Toshinori, face the truth. Recovery girl stared at him in the eye. Hard. Izuku Midoriya was given a quirk. Silence. It can't be, All Might said, shrinking into his seat. There must be something else. I refuse to believe. 7 years ago, you fought and defeated him and were gravely injured. And no. At the same time, another operation was taking place. A raid on one of his hideouts. There, they found the corpses of 17 children, but they also found 3 alive. Unspeakable experiments had occurred. Most of the children's corpses were mutilated, as if their body couldn't handle the stress of whatever they were given. One of the children found alive later died from her injuries. The 2 surviving children were returned to their families. All Might was speechless. Recovery Girl continued, Toshinori, I think you found one of the 2 survivors. The sounds of a ticking clock filled the silence. All Might slumped further into his seat. How can I face him after all of this? I failed him, I failed his. You did not fail him, Recovery Girl cut in sharply. If anything, you taking All For One down saved him from whatever heinous experiments that they had in store for him. Now, this doesn't change anything. Both of their minds were wiped regarding the incident. You just have to watch out for any other Quirk-like abilities popping up and guiding him when the time comes. Yes, I'll do just that. Now, what will you say to the boy? She asked. Nothing, All Might said. I'll instruct him on his new quirk and keep an eye out for any other potential quirks, but I won't say anything about All For One, not yet, at least. His memory was probably wiped for a good reason. That seems good for now. She looked at Toshinori's crumpled state. Toshinori, cheer up. This doesn't do anything about the fact that he wants to become a hero. All Might stared back at her before letting loose a small smile. You're right. As long as he aims to become a hero, I will guide him down that path, whatever it takes. Recovery Girl chuckled. That's the Toshinori I know. Izuku's training with One For All began in earnest after that. He learned how to control it so a fraction of its full power affected him. Instead of going 100%, he learned how to control it at 10% first. To his surprise, he found that he could maintain it consistently in that form all throughout his body. As for his other quirk, that had been more difficult. With no real idea on how it worked and how he could improve it individually, he stagnated in that area. He offered stabbing himself with sharp objects to build endurance, but All Might quickly vetoed that idea, stating that it could get too dangerous fast. Instead, he focused on improving it in tandem with One For All. Each time he booted up One For All, he focused on continuously flexing the body part that was undergoing training. It seemed that flexing his muscle triggered the frozen state, where it was impervious to damage. Using this method, he was able to fire off 50% smashes without any negative side effects. He didn't push to see what his limit was though, fearing another hospital visit. However, that meant his endurance had to go up. Being in a constant state of flexion was tiring after all. With his weightlifting program came a cardio program. First, swim 2,000 meters, then bike for 30 minutes, and finally run 3 miles around the track before lifting. It was like he was training for the Iron Man. Curiously enough, he was allowed to maintain 10% of One For All when exercising, once again, probably for endurance's sake. At the dojo, he kept himself quirkless, because he wanted to focus more on technique, not even using his own quirk. All Might agreed with this decision, stating that a tool without a sharp edge is blunt and useless. Izuku couldn't exactly tell where All Might was going with that, but he understood the underlying message clear enough. During the weekdays at school, Izuku spent it mostly bored out of his mind. Homework was done during the school's self-study classes when everyone else was goofing off. He was mostly friendless, but he didn't particularly mind. Kachan had been placed in a different class than Izuku, so he didn't have to worry about the conflicting signals the other teens seemed to give off. Kachan used to be Izuku's worst nightmare. But some time ago, when he was 8 or 9, all taunts and jeers from his former friend just stopped. All Izuku got were uneasy stares and the occasional sorrowful look. And as they went to high school, they just naturally drifted apart. Now, their relationship existed in limbo. Every other Sunday or so, he met up with Himiko to let off some steam from his jam-packed week. Each time, Izuku struggled to internally define what they were doing. Was it a friendly hangout? Was it a date? With the things they did, he couldn't really tell. Sometimes it would be entering a local beach volleyball tournament. Other times, it would be a candle-lit dinner at some high-end restaurant. It was getting all jumbled up. His feelings for her were beyond just general friendship, but he was too scared to take the next step and actually admit it. It was cowardly, sure, but this was the first time he's felt like this with someone else and he didn't want to mess it up. Himiko didn't seem to be in any rush, either. He could tell that she knew, just in the general way that she behaved and from her mannerisms, that he felt something for her, but she was waiting for him to breach the subject. For that he was infinitely grateful. A year passed by this way, and before he knew it, he was 16. It was a Friday afternoon when, in a twist of events, Himiko texted him first. Himiko. Hey. Himiko. Would you mind coming to the beach? Himiko. I wanna talk. Izuku didn't waste a second. Yelling a hurried goodbye to his mom and texting her back in affirmation, he hightailed it to Dagoba Beach. Whenever Himiko brought up the beach, it was always this one, so Izuku was sure that it was the correct destination. He spotted her in his old green hoodie, leaning against a lamp post. He was about to greet her when she staggered towards him, falling ungracefully into his arms. Himiko pressed her face into his chest and inhaled deeply, and Izuku would have blushed had it not been for Himiko's state. Face deathly pale and legs trembling, it was obvious that something was wrong. So he decided to ask. Himiko, what's wrong? Is something bothering you? She said something, but it was muffled by Izuku's shirt. Himiko. She kept on speaking, so Izuku released his grip on her and bent down till his ear was at her mouth level. And he heard. Been a good girl so please reward me. I've been a good girl so please reward me. I've been a good girl so please reward me. I've been a good girl so please reward me. I've been a good girl so please reward me. I've been a good girl so pleaser. Himiko, snap out of it. Izuku said sharply, grabbing the girl's shoulders and shaking them. Her unfocused eyes gained clarity again, zeroing in on Izuku's face. No, it wasn't his face, it was his neck. You can talk to me, he gently said, I promise that I'll listen to whatever you have to say. So just, I want to drink your blood. A beat passed. Did I hear that correctly? Himiko looked at him, an almost manic disposition crossing over her face. I want to, need to, drink your blood. It's all I can think about. It's driving me crazy. I've tried so many alternatives, but I know it'll just pale in comparison. Izuku was slightly panicking. Is there no other? Izuku. Himiko stared at him with a dead serious gaze. If I can't taste your blood soon, I'll attack the people around us. Please, I don't want that to happen. He paled at the gravity of her words. Taking a few glances around him at the crowded beachwalk, he came to a decision extremely quickly. All right, just stay calm and follow me. Himiko rubbed her legs together as she followed. Izuku, anticipation building with each step. She was finally going to taste him. Taste Izuku, her dear, sweet Izuku. It took every fiber of her being to stop herself from pouncing on him and taking what was rightfully hers. She shook her head to prevent herself from getting caught up in dangerous thoughts. As they found a secluded spot amongst an outcropping of rocks, Izuku found himself at a loss at how to proceed. Should he find something to stab himself with? Himiko decided for him by all but jumping on top of him, sending them both tumbling into the sand. Without waiting for a go-ahead signal, she sunk her canines into the base of Izuku's neck. Or at least, she tried to. When her teeth felt like it bit into a rock, she let out a desperate whine. Izuku, realizing that he'd subconsciously activated his other quirk, apologized, further stretching his neck and looking away in embarrassment. He felt slight pangs of pain when she successfully found purchase and broke skin. Her slick tongue darted back and forth, not letting a single drop of blood go to waste. Pain aside, it felt oddly intimate, with Himiko straddling him and her digging so ravenously into his neck. From another person's perspective, it could look like the two were in a heated makeout session. On the other hand, Himiko felt euphoric. It wasn't that his blood was juicier than others, no, nothing as macabre as that. It's just that, the fact that it was Izuku, her beloved Izuku, his sweet blood, something she'd looked forward to from all those years ago. She had a taste, a year or two ago, and that was enough to tide her over, but now she had all and more than she could ever ask for. He was hers. Himiko let out a moan, and Izuku blushed darkly. She seemed to be enjoying it, really enjoying it. Or at least that's what it seemed to him. The stinging sensation of pain was all but gone now, replaced by the wet feeling of her tongue. That being the only real sensation that he felt now, he could relax his wound-up muscles and focus on not getting a particular reaction from his nether regions due to the position they were in. She stopped after a minute or two, peeling back and admiring her handiwork on his skin. Although the wound strangely seemed to be already closing up, it left a visible imprint and she liked it. Licking her lips, she took the opportunity to embrace Izuku, burying her head into the crook of his neck and giggling happily. Himiko, Izuku trailed off. She hummed, lifting up her head and upper body so she could look at Izuku. Her bottom half stayed firmly straddling him. What is it? If you wouldn't mind, Izuku stammered, could you get off of me pretty please? Himiko laughed and got off, but not before giving her hips a rough roll, pressing into his lap. Izuku let out a meek noise, which only served to amuse Himiko even further. Face red, Izuku accepted her hand in getting up onto his feet. So, what do you wanna do now? Izuku asked, hiding his flushed face behind a hand. Himiko pressed a finger to her cheek, thinking for a bit, before saying, I wanna eat, but I dunno where. Surprise me. He smiled. I've got just the place. 20 minutes later they were sitting at a booth in one of Izuku's favorite ramen shops. Izuku prattled on and on about how good their garlic and pork stir-fried ramen was while Himiko listened to him rave in amusement. For something lighter, he recommended the yakisoba, which Himiko decided to get. With their orders placed, now all they could do was sit and wait, the elephant in the room squashing any of Izuku's attempts at conversation. Himiko was the one to breach the topic. With an uncharacteristic shyness, she said, thanks, by the way, for you. No. Yeah, no problem, Izuku said, scratching the mark that Himiko left. If you don't mind me asking, he trailed off. Himiko stared at him thoughtfully before finally saying, no, go ahead. The urge to, drink blood, Izuku began, do you normally have it contained or? Typically, I have it under control. But on some days, it just, Himiko let Izuku's imagination fill in the gaps. Is it triggered by something? Yeah, Himiko said simply, you. I've been able to keep it under control, but recently, I couldn't. I was about to go insane. Even when I drank other people's blood, yours would be the one I was imagining, Himiko sighed. Izuku nodded, but something she said caught his attention. Wait, others. For a moment, Himiko looked panicked, but that look evaporated, leaving Izuku to wonder whether or not he imagined it. Why yeah, people donate to my family for my condition. Oh, that's nice of them, Izuku said, missing the way her hands clenched and unclenched the tablecloth. Himiko laughed sheepishly. Their conversation was temporarily broken when their food arrived, Izuku taking his ramen and laying down Himiko's yakisoba in front of her. He waited for her to start eating before all but wolfing down his ramen, basking in the supremely good taste. She laughed at his state, taking small bites of her meal. You know, Izuku said suddenly, scratching the back of his neck. He had to summon the courage to say his next few words. If it ever gets that bad again, no, if you ever want to just drink blood, you can just call me. I'd be happy to offer. Izuku glanced up from his meal to find Himiko gaping at him. You're not disgusted. Afraid of me. I enjoy drinking blood, you know. Yeah, I know, he said, but be scared or disgusted by you. He looked her in the eye. Never. Izuku returned to his meal, missing the way Himiko's face flushed heavily, turning a much darker shade of red than even Izuku's blushes. Twiddling her fingers, she asked in a small voice, really? Yep, Izuku said easily, not even looking up from his meal. The conversation lulled into a comfortable silence after that. As Izuku ordered for seconds, Himiko chuckling at his embarrassment, she finished up her meal, but with the speed at which Izuku scarfed down his meals, they were done in no time. As they walked outside, Himiko nonchalantly said, you know, this has been the best birthday ever for me. Izuku froze. Birthday? Yeah. She blinked. August 7th. When's yours? July 15th, he answered before sputtering to a stop. Wait, that's not important. It's your birthday. Why are you spending it with me and not your? He paused suddenly, remembering that she lived alone and that family was probably not a good topic for her. She smiled graciously, not even noticing his almost slip, and sighed, saying, is it that odd spending your birthday with the guy you love? Izuku glanced around him, looking for the guy that she loved, before realizing almost painfully that it was him. Blushing, he mumbled, love. Yep, I love you, Izuku, she said sweetly. Izuku's world came crashing down upon him as he tried to process the words that Himiko just said. A raging blush found its home on his cheeks, causing Himiko to giggle at his reaction softly. You know, Himiko, Izuku said, with a rare dash of courage, Tilda, Himiko tutted, shushing him with a cold hand clapped over his mouth. Not until you're ready. Izuku nodded dumbly, any courage he had completely sapped. When she released her hand, he offered, at least let me buy you something. I don't have a gift prepared. She touched his neck where her mark still stood. You already gave me a gift. An actual one, Izuku stuttered, recoiling in embarrassment. Fine Tilda. They settled on a pair of black and green matching bracelets. ... He was sparring with All Might when a black tendril of energy shot out of his arm, coiling around All Might's leg and, in his surprised state, tripping him. The two stared at the offending appendage. Extension of himself. Before it disappeared within him. A beat passed. What was that? Izuku asked, dumbfounded. All Might, in a similar state of disbelief, said, that's Blackwhip. Izuku stared at him in a wordless gesture for further elaboration. A previous holder of One for All's quirk, All Might said, as if that would explain everything. When Izuku still stared at him, he deflated and scratched his head. But I've never seen it pop up before, at least not with me. Izuku stared at his arm, and remembering the surging sensation in his arm when the quirk activated, he tried using it again. As a result of his efforts, 10 coils of dense energy thrashed around him, carving deep gouges into the practice arena's sandy floor. He rapidly lost control and the tendrils extended, destroying everything in its path. He dimly heard All Might yelling at him over the sound of blood rushing to his skull, and he tried to contain Blackwhip. But with no real method of control, he was stuck. He tried to relax his arm to no avail. Now in a panic, Izuku tried to activate his own quirk. That only served to make the tendrils of energy nigh unbreakable, so he quickly deactivated his quirk. His vision was starting to blur, the activation of Blackwhip taking its toll on Izuku's body. He staggered back and forth, feeling the energy drain from his body with each thrash of Blackwhip. He didn't know how or when it happened, but the next thing he knew he woke up and was back in Recovery Girl's office. She seemed to be admonishing a panicking All Might, but when she noticed him stir, she rushed to his side, asking him a storm of medical questions that he struggled to answer. When she finished furiously scribbling down answers onto a clipboard, she said a quick, "I'll be back," and took All Might into her office. He waited patiently, having nothing to do but. Izuku blinked. He was in a space devoid of light. The darkness was spread all around him except for a figure. It motioned for him to approach, and Izuku, not seeing any other option, approached slowly. The man, Izuku now saw, was bald and ripped, with a square jaw and goggles pushed back into his forehead. He wore a black jacket with the middle open, exposing his chest. He held up his hand and tendrils of Blackwhip formed, coiling around their master's hand. My Blackwhip's a top-tier quirk, you hear? The man said proudly, jutting out his chest. Izuku could only nod dumbly in response. The man seemed to ruminate over something before saying, it seems my time here is limited, so I'll cut this quick. The previous quirks of the people who inherited One for All lie in here, dormant. I'm guessing that I can activate them. Izuku asked. And you're a previous user of One for All. Just mine, for now at least, the man nodded. Glad to see you're fast on the uptake. I was worried I'd have to spend my time explaining the basics. Listen, Blackwhip's power has been magnified by One for All of our quirks were, in fact. I was only able to use 5 tendrils in my prime. It'll rampage if you use it at full strength, but you can decrease the power output like you do with One for All to make it easier to bear. Controlling it will. Izuku blinked. He was back in Recovery Girl's office, only this time All Might and Recovery Girl were in there with him. He recoiled a bit from the sharp jump, prompting All Might to ask, young man, what's wrong? Taking a deep breath, Izuku debated on telling him about his vision, but he ultimately decided to tell All Might, explaining the encounter as best as he could. All Might nodded in vague understanding while Recovery Girl looked horrified. Patient's quirk causes hallucinations, she mumbled, jotting it down in a notebook. All Might's sweat dropped. He began, Izuku's likely telling the truth. I remember having similar visions. Recovery Girl stared at him before writing, Toshinori also suffers from delusions, as well. I do not. All Might said indignantly, looking over her shoulder at what she was writing. Well, whatever this is, it's up to you two to figure it out, Recovery Girl huffed, walking away. Izuku watched her leave the room before turning to All Might, a face-splitting smile worming its way onto his face. Practice time. All Might grinned. Practice time. ... Izuku sat in his desk during study hall, gently tapping his fingers in a nameless tune, when someone busted through the door. Deku. Izuku languidly looked up at the source of commotion. Bakugo stood at the doorway, breathing heavily with his hands on his knees. Pushing himself up, he said breathlessly, Are you applying to UA? The questioned boy wondered how Bakugo got access to that information. Sighing, Izuku said, Yeah, I am. Are you, Bakugo? The slip-up went unnoticed by the other teen. Yes, but that's not important, Bakugo dismissed. The two now had the whole class attention. What's important is that you understand what you're getting yourself into. Izuku grit his teeth. Yes, I do. You're making too big a deal out of this. It is a big, do you even? Bakugo swallowed heavily, walking up to Izuku and whispering heatedly, do you even remember what happened to you? He blinked. Is there something I'm supposed to remember? Bakugo peered wide-eyed at Izuku, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. The little Bakugo was asking out of the kindness of his heart, and Izuku was playing pretend. He clarified, the summer when we were 8. Do you remember? Not a single thing, Izuku said. But I don't have many memories of before I was 10. Why? Did something happen? Bakugo was still staring. He muttered something to himself. They took his memory. What was that? Nothing, Bakugo huffed, stepping away. As a parting shot, he added, UA doesn't take quirkless people, so I suggest not getting your hopes up. With that, he stormed out of the room. Izuku watched him leave as his classmates began to whisper about the encounter that just occurred. Just you wait, Kachan, Izuku thought. Just you wait. ... The day was finally here. The day where he would prove everyone wrong. The day that he would prove to the world that he wasn't quirkless. The day he'd been training for day after day for the past 4-5 years was finally upon him. He'd been strengthening his quirks. Now he could use one for all at 30% throughout his body normally, 50% if paired with his other quirk. Black Whip was up to 5 strong tendrils of black energy, and he could use 100% of one for all in short bursts up to 4 times without putting too much strain on his body. He was ready. All Might had suggested that he could get him in through recommendations, but Izuku quickly turned that offer down. He wanted to get in the legitimate way, and if he failed, well then, maybe he was unworthy of being One for All's successor. All Might quickly chastised him when he expressed that sentiment. With your current state, it's not a matter of whether or not you get in, All Might had said, it becomes a matter of how you get in. You just may get the highest score in UA's history. That lit a fire in Izuku. He now had a secondary goal attached to his main goal of getting into UA, get the highest score on the entrance exams. With a wave goodbye at his mom, Izuku Midoriya started a new chapter in his life. The entrance exam. UA. University's entrance exams were split into 2 parts, the written exam and the practical exam. While the practical exam was more famous for obvious reasons, that didn't mean that the written exam was a cakewalk. A fair share of students failed the entrance exam by underestimating the written exam, but Izuku, overprepared and overstudied, did not even begin to describe the boy's state. Finishing each section with ease, each time having the time to double, triple-check his answers, Izuku felt confident in his exam score. It would be near the top, if not the top, of scores in his year, without a doubt. Academics had always come easily to him, and UA was more famous for its heroics course, so it didn't put the most difficult questions on the written exam. He wondered what it was like for the general studies course and how Himiko was faring. He absent-mindedly toyed with his bracelet he'd gotten with Himiko on her birthday as he waited for the exam papers to be collected. Once collected, he was ushered with the rest of the students applying to the heroics course into a large auditorium. He spotted Katsuki on the way over, but the team merely greeted him with a glare and stormed off. Their relationship had been sour ever since the explosive teen found out that Izuku was trying for UA's heroics course, and Izuku wasn't really in the mood to patch things up. He sat in between a blonde-haired boy and a brunette girl. The girl gave him a shy smile before their attention was captured by the man greeting the nervous applicants. "Welcome everyone to my show," the man roared. "Everybody say hey." The auditorium was silent. But Izuku was near hyperventilating. That's the voice hero present mic. It's him. I listen to his weekly show all the time. I wonder if his loud personality is just a byproduct. The people around him were a bit creeped out by his muttering, but present mic paid him no heed and continued. Tough crowd, ahahaha. Well, I'll just get on with it then. No use dilly-dallying. He paused as if to check if anyone laughed, and seeing that no one did, he cleared his throat awkwardly. We'll be seeing if you have the skills to rock the house in the 15-minute practical exam. Present mic shouted, carrying on. Gather at your designated site after. And he's really loud, Izuku continued, loud enough that I have trouble. There will be tons of false villains at the site, each ranging from a 1, 2, to a 3-pointer. Your job is to take down these villains and rack up a high score while doing so. But be warned, there is no direct sabotaging of other students allowed. That is unheroic and will result in demerits. Excuse me. A listener in the stands shouted, standing up and drawing all eyes to his figure. He was tall, with ramrod stiff posture and a square jaw. The handout clearly lists 4 villains. Are you telling me that the prestigious UA would make such a mistake? Suddenly, he turned to Izuku. And you've been muttering to yourself this whole time, are you even taking this seriously? UA's standards have surely fallen if. Hey shitty 4 eyes. A new voice roared, once again drawing all eyes to a seething blonde boy. Katsuki raged, find your own nerd to bully and shut up. Izuku, surprised by Katsuki's reaction, could only gape at the scene before him. Before tensions could escalate, present mic cut in. Ahem. Very astute observation. The 4th type of villain is, how to put it delicately, a huge distraction. I would avoid it if I were you. It's called a 0-pointer for a reason. I understand. Forgive me for interrupting, the tall boy said, sitting back down. No problem. Now, I'll leave you with this academy's catchphrase, so to speak. The ability to go beyond, to go even further. He paused for dramatic effect. Plus ultraaaaa. ... Toshinori, a bored voice said. Yes, Aizawa. The skeletal form of All Might responded. They, along with a handful of other teachers, were gathered in the practical exams control room. Monitors showed every inch of every test site, and teachers sat at the ready with pencils and paper to record villain takedowns. Another team of teachers were ready to record the hidden rescue points. He had originally planned on keeping his skeletal form a secret, but ever since giving Izuku one for all, it became too taxing on his body to stay in his muscular form. After some internal fretting, he decided to trust the other teachers at UA, telling them about his current state and limitations. As of now, he could maintain muscular form for a couple of hours at best. The reply was terse. Which one is yours? All Might sighed as he felt the gazes of every teacher in the room save for Nezu on him. The cat was out of the bag for sure now. Izuku Midoriya, screens 7 and 8. He has green hair, so you can't miss him. The teachers crowded around screens 7 and 8, all aiming to catch a glimpse of the one who inherited one for all. They found him, clad in black sweats and a green top, jogging in place to warm himself up. He was isolated from the other test takers, they were obviously miffed and confused by the boy's actions. He seems normal, Midnight said, before peering a bit closer at the screen. Definitely muscular, though not on your level, Toshinori. Just wait and see, All Might dismissed. His hard work and dedication wasn't just for nothing, you know. He's trained for years for this day. I have the utmost faith that he'll not just succeed, he'll surpass even my grade from way back. Oho tilde, are you willing to bet money on that? All Might grinned cheekily. Yep. ... Izuku jogged in place outside of the exam site, warming up his body for the practical exam. Remembering something, Izuku reached into his rucksack and pulled out a pure black breathing mask. The carbon mask had been a gift from Himiko on his 17th birthday, and it had 2 functions, one to limit breathing, to make a workout harder, and another to make breathing easier, to make it easier to take deep gulps of air. He set it to the second function before slipping it on, sliding snugly against his face until it settled in with a click. Slowly, the doors to the testing site opened. Izuku, not wasting a second, walked into the darkness. What awaited him on the other side was a miniature city, of sorts. People started filing in after him, gathering at a literal starting line. They waited for a cue to begin. "Alright, you can start," a tired voice said. Izuku activated 50% and immediately sped off, not needing a second cue. He didn't see it, but the rest of the examinees stood there, dumbfounded. The tired voice from before said, "Do I need to repeat myself?" "Go." The examinees got going, heading deeper into the city only to find the ruins of robots, smoldering in the afternoon breeze. A streak of green light disappeared behind a corner, leaving devastated 1, 2, and 3 pointers in its wake. Seeing as how there weren't any surviving robots to attack, the examinees split up, each going their separate ways to salvage a point or two from the evident madman. Izuku leapt from robot to robot, using Black Whip to slingshot him between robots and one for all to dismantle them handily with a punch or a kick. He kept track of how many robots he destroyed and the points he gathered mentally, making note of the bright numbers plastered on the bots indicating their point worth. He was somewhere at 60, 61, he rectified, striking down a 1-pointer, and he was indiscriminate in his robot destruction. 1, 2, 3-pointer, they all met their demise by his hands. It was a sort of mindless task, Izuku lamented, picking up his 75th point. It also favored combat quirks over all other quirks. While he did understand the basics of why it favored what it did, he couldn't help but think that a lot of potential would be wasted. Combat quirks weren't everything, especially when dealing with rescue missions and the like, and it seemed unfair to disregard them in the exam for the heroics course. His mind drifted to Himiko. From what he understood, her quirk allows her to transform into whoever she drinks the blood of. It can be an extremely useful quirk for stealth or sting operations, but in this exam, it would be useless. He idly wondered if that was why she was applying to the general course instead of the heroics course. Izuku was getting off track. Focusing in, he doubled down on the motions he went through. At the dojo he'd fought and sparred against real people. These robots didn't give nearly the same challenge, especially now that he was using all of his quirks. Activate Black Whip. Slingshot to a 2-pointer. Kick it with 50%. Smash its friend with a fist to the face. Repeat. He whipped Black Whip around a pole, sliding on the ground in a 90-degree arc before detaching, barreling headfirst into a group of 1-pointers. A blistering combo later, they were all dispatched with ease, and Izuku reactivated Black Whip, saving time by sliding around another corner. Seeing a group of people fighting robots ahead of him and to the right, he decided to turn left to avoid others. He didn't want to poach other people's points, sure, but what was more important to him was that there weren't any people around him to slow him down. It really was a mindless process. Izuku found his focus slipping, but he reined himself in and steeled himself. He only needed to concentrate for 15 minutes, not just to pass, but also to get the highest score in UA history. That was the goal he set for himself, and he'd be damned if he didn't achieve it. He blitzed through a group of 3-pointers, destroying them with a 1-2 combo, an uppercut, and a brutal haymaker. 92 points, and how many minutes left? Izuku had the feeling that it was just about 8 minutes left, give or take a minute, but he shook it off and got back to focusing on the task at hand. Izuku kicked the next 3 bots, denting the metal hard enough to completely deform it. He smoothly moved on, taking out a group of 2-pointers in a flash of green light. Using Black Whip to shoot himself around yet another street corner, he nearly crashed into a brunette making robots float. Yeah, she was making robots float by tapping them as she ran by them. The girl looked queasy, but her tactic was working. The robots would float up 3, 4 stories before being unceremoniously dropped, shattering into tiny fragments upon hitting the ground. Oops, sorry for almost running into ya, Izuku said before taking off, not even giving the girl a chance to respond. Izuku continued on his rampage, obliterating robots left and right. It was a one-sided slaughterfest. He could often destroy them before they even registered that he was standing in front of them. It made the exam a complete bore and incredibly easy, but Izuku decided to count his blessings and not complain. He didn't know what the record for the exam was, but he was confident that he was close to it. Little did he know that he was being heavily scrutinized. Toshinori, Midnight said, still staring at the screen, what have you been feeding this kid? Steroids, he deadpanned. That earned him a smack on the shoulder. I'm serious. This kid's a blur of green and black. The cameras are even struggling to pick him up, and that's not counting. Sue, All Might drawled, gazing back at the woman, how much money do you owe me? Getting a bit cocky, she huffed, crossing her arms. Midnight didn't want to admit it, but if Izuku kept pace, he would blow the previous record out of the water. Aizawa didn't comment save for I call dibs on teaching his class. That earned a fair amount of debate and yelling, forcing Principal Nezu to cough. He said, well, let's see how he faces a real challenge. Wait, Power Loader said, isn't it a bit too early to release the 0-pointer? The principal just stared at him blankly. I'll take that as a no. Izuku just finished mopping up his 108th point when he felt the ground rumbling. He spotted a group of people running, from something, it seemed. They passed the alleyway he was in, shrieking and sprinting as if their life depended on it. What followed after them was a robot leg. No, scratch that. A gigantic robot was chasing after them, the leg nearly being an extension of a much larger hole. Out of curiosity, Izuku ran out of the alleyway onto the street. He gaped at the sheer size of the 0-pointer. That thing had to have been at least 50 feet tall, if not more. And that wasn't the only one. More kept on popping out of the ground like moles. He counted 3 of them in total, and they all split and went in separate directions. He knew he should have left it alone, but Izuku wanted to test his strength. And, if he was being honest, this feeling of domination, of utterly outclassing the robots, was frankly exhilarating. Just as a 0-pointer trapped a group of examinees against a corner of the road, Izuku blitzed onto the scene. Not wasting a moment, Izuku whipped up to the head using Black Whip and scissor kicked it. The force of the impact sent him flying, so he readjusted Black Whip to latch himself against the building before observing the robot. It had sustained noticeable damage, but not enough to put it out of commission. Well, if 50% doesn't work, Izuku murmured, cocking back his right arm. He grunted as he felt the full force of One for All seep through his muscles before rocketing off of the building, using a solitary strand of Black Whip to make sure his aim was true. He zeroed in on the giant robot, punching it with the full force of One for All. Since he somewhat crossed it, the robot went flying to the left, even leaving its treads as it smashed into the building next to it. As he fell to the ground, he admired his handiwork. The robot was utterly smashed, a heaping wreck of scrap metal in a collapsing building. Wait, collapsing building. Izuku's mind briefly went into panic mode as he saw the building crumbling. There were still examinees under it, examinees who just looked up and saw giant shards of glass and concrete falling down at them. Before he even knew what he was doing, he'd extended Black Whip at the 3 furthest examinees, throwing them gracelessly to safety as he ran to the last 2. Using a 50% boost, he reached them and grabbed their hands, not waiting for their consent or even bare acknowledgement. He yanked them to safety, the glass and concrete falling harmlessly upon a spot where they'd been moments before. Sorry about that, Izuku mumbled in apology before taking off once more, leaving a couple gaping examinees behind. Their whole encounter took less than a minute, and Izuku didn't slow down. Sprinting after one of the 0-pointers, he rounded a ruined street corner using Black Whip and saw the levitating girl from earlier stuck on something. He couldn't tell from his location what pinned her to the ground. The massive robot towered over her, priming to strike before Izuku immediately sprung into action. As the gigantic fist came flying down at the levitating girl, Izuku barreled into it with a kick to send it careening off course. As it slammed down harmlessly into the ground a fair distance from the downed girl, Izuku shot a strand of Black Whip to coil around the robot's dome, slingshotting him forward towards its head where he met the robot with a brutal, 100% uppercut. He felt his arm tweak in protest, but Izuku fought through the slight pain and finished the swing, sending the robot flying off of the ground a dozen feet or so. It crashed to the ground with a mighty thud, electrical sparks going haywire. Fearing it might combust or explode, Izuku quickly went to free the levitating girl. There was a bit of vomit to the side of her, but Izuku paid it no special attention as he lifted the heavy slab of concrete on her right leg. "You all right?" he asked, helping her up. She gingerly put weight on her right leg before settling in on it fully. She stared at him and then at the vomit on the ground, a faint blush spreading across her cheeks. "Why yeah, I don't know what happened, I lost control and..." "No worries," Izuku dismissed. My apologies, but I've gotta go and, he gestured wordlessly at the ruined robots that lined the streets. She nodded numbly, still staring at him with a peculiar expression. He stared back at her, not quite sure what to say. After a brief moment of silence, he said, "Well, stay safe. See you later." Without another word, he raced off using 50% of One for All. Following the loudest sounds of screaming coming from somewhere to the right of him, Izuku dismantled robots left and right with a second objective in mind: find the final zero-pointer and defeat it. There was no real benefit to doing such a thing, but a smile appeared on his face. He'd gone for so long being weak, being quirkless. Now was an opportunity to show All Might the fruits of his training, to prove to the hero that he'd made the right choice in picking Izuku to be his successor. The teachers, save for All Might, gaped as Izuku seemingly made a beeline for his area's final zero-pointer, destroying robots on the way. Someone correct me if I'm mistaken, but, midnight began, doesn't it seem like Midoriya is actively pursuing the zero-pointer? No one refuted the statement. All Might sat there, happily humming to himself. Izuku was putting on a show. He was broadcasting to the entire faculty that he had exactly what they looked for in a student. Izuku was strong and intelligent, sure, but his care for the other participants of the exam and his act of saving the others truly set him apart from the rest. Sure, there were other students racking up a few rescue points here and there, but none of them were as seemingly quick or as eager to do them as Izuku was. The kid saved others like it was his first instinct, the natural thing to do. And that made All Might proud, happy, and content that he had chosen the right person to be his successor. He looked up just in time to watch his successor slingshot off of two adjacent buildings using Black Whip, flying high above the final zero-pointer before shooting a third strand of it directly to the robot's head. Using the connection to reel himself in, he delivered a ground-splitting kick to the top of the robot's head, causing the robot to essentially cave in upon itself. Seemingly satisfied at the result of the destroyed robot, Izuku leapt off again in a blur of fragmented green energy and black shadows. Yeah, his previous record stood no chance. The bells ringing signaled to Izuku that the test was over. He was on his 157th point when the robot suddenly stopped moving. Not that it was going to make much of a difference as to what the end result would be, but it still miffed Izuku that technically he hadn't gotten his 157th point. If that was the deciding point in whether or not he beat All Might's record, he might just cry his eyes out. As Izuku walked towards the exit, the original starting area, he couldn't help but notice a large amount of staring and whispering going on. Seeing as to how they pointed at him and no one else, Izuku surmised that he was the hot topic issue of the day. Blushing slightly in embarrassment, he took off his face mask and stored it away into his rucksack that was tucked away inside one of the provided lockers before promptly getting out of there. He made his way towards the main gate of UA while pulling out his phone. Scrolling through his very sparse contact list, he found what he was looking for and shot Himiko a text. Izuku. Hello. Izuku. I was just wondering if you were done with your exam. I'm done with mine. Izuku hesitated for a moment, mentally gathering the courage he needed, and proceeded to type. Izuku. I would like to see you and talk to you about how it went. His confidence failed him. Izuku. That is, only if you want to talk about it. Izuku shut his eyes and resisted the urge to chuck his phone into the sky with an One for All enhanced arm. Cringe. He was so utterly cringe. He really wished that there was an unsend button for text messages. It was a shock that Himiko even bothered hanging around him considering how damn awkward he knew he was. His phone buzzed multiple times, and Izuku cracked an eye open to look at his screen. Himiko. Yay. Himiko. Izu would like to see me. Yay. Izuku flushed madly. His stupid, dumb, dopey, foolish mouth. Himiko. I've been done for a while. Himiko. Waiting for you at the main gate. Himiko. Let's go grab some food too. 3. Izuku replied with an okay, subconsciously grinning to himself. He jogged to the main entrance of UA, spotting a blonde girl with twin buns leaning against one of the many pillars. She was on her phone, ignoring the groups of fellow hopeful students chatting beside her as they waited for the bus or their ride to pick them up. Hey, Himiko, Izuku said shyly, walking up to her. At this point, he knew what would be coming. Himiko looked up from her phone, instantly recognizing his voice. Without a second thought of where they were or who was watching, she glommed him. Izuku. Izuku lightly patted her on the back, a bit embarrassed by the many amused looks they were receiving and of the fact that he was still sweaty from the exam. He dimly caught the words "oh. Boyfriend and girlfriend." Or "ooh, are they dating?" Himiko, evidently hearing the same things, hugged him tighter before letting go of him. "Well then," she said, a cat-like grin appearing on her face, "where to?" Izuku thought for a moment before responding. "The usual ramen shop." Himiko smiled brightly. "Yep." Seeing as how they weren't in a rush, Izuku and Himiko decided to walk to one of Izuku's favorite ramen shops. It was where they'd spent Himiko's birthday together all those years ago, and they visited it fairly regularly, or at least regularly enough to the point that the kindly old lady that ran the shop remembered their faces and orders. On the way, they chatted about the differences between the General Studies entrance exam and the Heroics course entrance exam. To Izuku's surprise, the General Studies exam seemed to be the same as the Heroics course's written exam save for one thing. Himiko's contained two categories: reading comprehension, essentially reading and writing, and math. Izuku's also contained an additional section regarding the history of heroics and hero regulations. But that one was easy, Izuku sighed. Any hero geek worth their salt would have been able to answer that section perfectly. I mean, it even asked about the largest known villain group to be squashed in the last century. Anyone should know it was the Chameleon Guild, and it was destroyed by All Might and Sir Night-Eye in the 15 Nights of Summer's Tide. The four heads of the Chameleon were Tobayashi, Rise, Sanaka, and Ted, but they didn't even ask about them. Izuku huffed, before going off onto another rant about the disappointingly easy heroic history section. Himiko, to her credit, tried to follow along at the beginning, but eventually gave up, opting instead to watch her Izuku rant passionately about the subject. Her Izuku. She loved how he ranted passionately about subjects he was interested in. She loved how his eyes lit up, flashing green. She loved how he lost track of everything else, only focusing on her and the topic at hand. She even loved how he reacted when he realized he'd been ranting, flushing red with embarrassment and offering a meek apology. She loved him. 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 Himiko. Izuku said, worriedly glancing at the girl beside him. She seemed to have an almost manic expression on her face, but that face instantly disappeared, leaving him to wonder if it ever truly existed in the first place. Yes, Izuku. Oh, he murmured, flustered at even the sweet tone she answered him in. Steeling himself, he offered, I was just wondering if you've got anything on your mind. You've been quiet for a while. She giggled. Oh, nothing. Just enjoying the view. Her eyes never left Izuku's. Perplexed, Izuku looked behind him, completely missing Himiko's teasing. There was nothing of note around them, but Izuku supposed she was free to enjoy whatever view she wanted to enjoy. He told her that, and to his surprise, she burst out into laughter. Sometimes you can be such a dork, she said fondly. Their afternoon passed by pleasantly, with the two ordering their usuals at the ramen shop. Even though it was too early to be considered dinner, Izuku wolfed down his share and then some when Himiko tantalizingly offered him the remnants of her meal. The two killed some time milling about, even hitting up an arcade where he tried, and failed, to get Himiko the prize plushie. The damn thing was so close, and it was only at Himiko's suggestion that they get back before the last trains that he finally gave up. He'd have his revenge, though. That thing took out a sizable chunk of his monthly allowance. When they reached his apartment, he immediately offered, you know, I'd be more than willing to walk you back to yours first. It had become a ritual of sorts. Whenever they hung out, Himiko would walk with Izuku back to his home, but she would adamantly refuse letting him walk her to her home first. He asked every time, but she was stout in her refusal, not budging one bit. Izuku never pushed on the subject, though, respecting her desire for privacy. Nope, there's no need for that. Her reply was terse and final. Izuku sighed. Thought so. Just know my offer is always open. Himiko smiled, revealing her fangs. Ah, Izuku, worried about me. Honestly, yes. He looked at her surprised expression before continuing, I care about you, so I'll always worry. Even if I know you're capable of protecting yourself. She looked down, hiding her eyes behind a curtain of blonde hair. With an odd, but cute squealing sort of sound, she lightly hit Izuku's shoulder with a closed fist and held it there. Being that honest is unfair. Izuku brought his hand up and grasped her wrist, bringing it down to their waists. Well, it's how I truly think. He looked down at her fondly. She was blushing, well, to be exact, her face always seemed like it was blushing even in the most mundane of situations, but this time it was much more pronounced. Grinning, he said the next thing that he knew would make her happy. Hey, Himiko, want some of my blood? She instantly looked up. Even after all this time, years of him offering blood to her occasionally, the delight on her face hadn't faded one bit when she heard his words. She had the barest of patience, though, are you sure? Izuku rolled his eyes. Yes I am. Here. He leaned down a bit and tilted his head, exposing his neck and relaxing it to deactivate his other quirk. Himiko shivered in anticipation and without a second of hesitation, she bit into his neck. The slightly painful pricks were quickly replaced with a dull sensation of her tongue lapping back and forth. She hugged him close, digging ravenously into his neck, and Izuku flushed at the intimacy of their position. When she was done, she licked his neck slowly, sensually before peeling off. Both of them were panting and just a bit hot and flustered, Izuku more so than Himiko. He idly wondered if he was developing a fetish, but quickly shook off the thought when Himiko shot him a bright grin. Unable to stop herself, she gave Izuku a quick peck on the cheek, smiling toothily at him before offering a, well, I guess this is goodbye. Not for long, Izuku reminded, blushing crimson. See you soon. She giggled. Yeah. Izuku stood on UA University's dorm grounds, idly wondering why All Might had called him there. A sudden thought struck him. What if he failed the entrance exam? He knew it was unlikely, but what if he'd hurt someone accidentally during the exam? Wouldn't that be grounds for automatic disqualification? Oh God, what if he? Izuku. All Might called, walking over in his deflated form. Oh no, All Might thought. He's muttering to himself again. Izuku. No, Toshinori-sensei. Izuku turned to him, did I fail the entrance exam? What? No, All Might cut in, you passed with flying colors. I called you here today to help the students that got in on recommendation move into their dorms. They're going to be in your class, 1A. Izuku blinked. He definitely was not about to bawl his eyes out at having realized his lifelong goal of going to UA. Yep, definitely not. All Might, noticing his reaction, smiled gently and patted the boy on his back. Congratulations, by the way. And thank you for earning me some spare change. Izuku sniffled but then paused. Wait, spare cha. He was interrupted by All Might's typical boisterous laugh. Don't worry about it, young man. Now pull yourself together, we're going to meet two of your future classmates. Izuku watched All Might walk off after that, stealing himself, but he took the time to do a happy dance. He got into UA. He tried to suppress a massive smile but ultimately failed, and it was the sight of Izuku smiling that All Might turned around too. Shaking his head, he decided to let the boy have his moment. Once he was composed, he followed his mentor to his future home. The place they arrived at was a huge, H-shaped building with the sign 1A Alliance written on the front of it. The left wings are for males, and the right wings are for females, All Might explained, morphing into his muscular form after checking that no one was nearby. The boy is young Todoroki, and the girl is young Yaoyorozu. Todoroki. That was curious, very curious. It wasn't, by chance, the same Todoroki as the number 2 hero Endeavor's Todoroki, was it? He asked All Might that question, to which he answered, no, it's the same Todoroki. He's Endeavor's son. Izuku nodded, mentally remembering the names as they walked into the common room, which was surprisingly full of clutter. Wait, it wasn't just clutter, the boxes all had property of Momo Yaoyorozu splattered in bright red font on the front of the boxes. Only one or two had Shoto Todoroki written plainly on it. All right kids, the helper I told you about is here. All Might all but roared. After a couple of seconds, two people emerged from opposite staircases. The boy who emerged from the left staircase had red and white hair and an angry red scar across his face. He regarded Izuku with a cool look before walking up to him and offering a terse Todoroki. He held out a hand. "Hi, Todoroki," Izuku greeted a bit shyly, shaking his hand. "I'm Izuku Midoriya." "Hi Midoriya," the girl said happily, sending the men in the room a polite smile. "I'm Momo Yaoyorozu. You must be All Might's errand boy." Even with his limited social experience, he could discern that she wasn't trying to insult him. Her bright, pure eyes only indicated her excitement and curiosity without a trace of maliciousness. He fidgeted, saying awkwardly, "Yep. And he'll be helping you move in. I've gotta go now and patrol the town and stop any wrongdoers." With an almost apologetic look on his face, he quickly left the building. Wait, Izuku thought, did he just shove off his work onto me? Izuku hummed thoughtfully before turning around, looking at the boxes. "I'll do Todoroki first since it appears like he has less stuff. After we get him squared away, I'll come help you out, Yaoyorozu." With their assent to his plan, he got down to business. Bending down and activating 10% of One for All, he easily picked up Todoroki's boxes and headed over to the left staircase. When doing so, he unknowingly missed the shocked expressions of the two. It had been surprising when Izuku suddenly glowed, shooting off ethereal sparks of green electricity, but when he bent over and easily picked up not one but two of the heavy boxes they'd been struggling to even lift off the ground, Shoto and Momo were downright flabbergasted. "Todoroki, can you show me where your room is?" Izuku asked, peeking out from the side of two gigantic boxes. "Yeah," the taller boy said after a somewhat lengthy pause, taking the time to get over his slight shock. "Follow me." Shoto walked ahead of him, guiding the way. He watched Izuku climb up the left staircase, ready to offer a helping hand if need be, but it seemed that such help would be unnecessary. The other teen smoothly carried the boxes up to the third floor where his bedroom was. Setting it on the ground easily, Izuku asked, "Need help unpacking it?" "No." Shoto gave him an evaluating look before finally saying, "Thank you, though." "No problem." The other boy smiled widely. "I must say, I really like the aesthetic of this room, a very traditional, Japanese-styled room." "Thanks." It was plain and some people might even call it boring, but it was what Shoto liked. He was glad that there was another that seemed to share the same tastes that he did. "Well, if you need anything just holler," Izuku offered. "I'm gonna go help Yaoyorozu. Looks like she'd take a bit more time than you did." Shoto snorted in amusement at that comment. As Izuku walked down to the first floor of the dorm, his phone buzzed, signaling the arrival of a text. Whipping it out, his eyes widened when he saw it was from All Might. "All Might, forgive me, I couldn't tell them you were a student before the exam results came out." Izuku, "Yeah, I get it. It's fine." Izuku, "By the way, were you originally supposed to help them set up their rooms?" All Might, hee. The number one hero sent him an emoticon of a cutesy anime girl hitting the side of her head with a fist, shutting one eye in a wink, and sticking her tongue out. He could only laugh quietly at the sheer ridiculousness of that. "Midoriya," Momo called out as he rounded the corner, bounding over to his location. She asked, "Are you done with Todoroki's room?" "Yeah," Izuku said simply. "Yay. Then, it's time to do my room next." She beamed with tangible amounts of excitement. Izuku nodded, saying, "Yup." Bending over and picking up one of the many large boxes after activating One for All, he idly wondered why the girl seemed to be so excited over something as mundane as moving in, but hey, who was he to judge what people found exciting? "Can you show me where you want me to move them?" "Yes," she smiled, "follow me." As she led him to the girl's side of the building, she asked, "So, how long have you been All Might's personal errand boy?" "URK." Izuku nearly stumbled at the sudden question, but he luckily caught himself. "A couple of years. He saved me from a villain a while back, and I've been in his debt ever since." "Oh, what type of villain was it?" He had a sludge-type quirk that could immobilize people when in contact with it." "Scary stuff ooh, so what type of things do you do for All Might?" "Ah, just typical things. Like, the usual." Let it be known that coming up with stories and lies was never Izuku's forte. Momo stopped in her tracks, sending a curious glance at Izuku, prodding him to continue his explanation. Izuku spoke as if he were verbally walking on eggshells. "Well, as payment for helping him with Ah, things, he helps me work out sometimes. That got Momo's full attention. You get to work out with All Might. Now that he mentioned it, Momo took a closer look at All Might's errand boy. He was obviously well built, but the clothes he wore made it difficult to discern just how toned he was underneath that outfit. Then she madly blushed at what she was picturing in her head. Yeah, Izuku said, happy to see that this girl seemed to like All Might. It's really cool. He shows me the workouts he does. She instantly stopped walking and turned around, grabbing his forearms. You've gotta tell me what type of workouts he does. While Izuku was initially taken back by the suddenness of the contact, he quickly got into his comfort zone as he talked about his favorite hero, All Might. Momo listened, enraptured, hanging off of his every word. Through her excited reactions, he could tell that she was just as big a fan as he was, and he was glad to find some common ground between them. The time passed quickly as he discussed his favorite subject with Momo and helped her unpack. It was nice to have someone to discuss hero-related stuff with. His mother couldn't keep up with all of their names, and Himiko was strangely apathetic towards heroes in general. The way Himiko's face crinkled up at the mention of heroics was a telltale sign for Izuku to avoid bringing up the subject matter in front of her. Momo, he discovered, was also a massive hero geek, and she grew excited over seemingly the smallest and most mundane things. She explained how it was always her dream to attend UA, and now that she was going she was determined to be the best. During this time, Izuku kept quiet about the fact that he, too, was going not just to UA but also to be in the same class as her. An hour later, the two decided to take a breather, sitting down on the sofa in the common room. Sorry for making you help me with all of this. She gestured out at the plethora of boxes still remaining on the first floor. No need to be sorry, Izuku responded. Plus, it's fun talking to you. Momo smiled bashfully. With a cough, she said, it's odd, though. My family paid the movers a decent sum of money, but they just left it here instead of moving it into my room, saying that their job was done technically once they moved the boxes into the dorms. That sucks, Izuku said sympathetically. Just curious though, and not to be rude and pry, or anything, but how much did you guys pay them? If they were paid too little, they could have just done it out of spite. Momo thought, probably 754,000 yen. Somewhere around that number. As I said, a decent sum of money. Izuku blanched at the number. She sighed. I think that might have been too little, yeah. No, Izuku deadpanned, if anything, that's way too much. They may have been too excited to get all that money and were rushing off to spend it. Oh, I get it. With the way her eyes were looking at him, wide and unblinking, and combined with the general confused expression on her face, he could tell that she did not, in fact, get it. He idly wondered if her family was stinking rich or something like that. Before any further conversation could happen, the front door clicked open and a disheveled man walked through. Clad in a black long-sleeve shirt and similarly colored pants, the man looked more like he was sleepwalking with the dark bags under his eyes and how languidly he moved about. Is that Eraserhead? Izuku stage whispered to Momo. He's rarely seen these days. Is he a teacher at UA, too? Yes, I think it is. Momo said, barely suppressed excitement coming clear across her voice. I can hear you too, you know. Come here. With an eek, the two jumped to attention, walking towards Eraserhead. Izuku stopped right in front of the pro hero, offering, what did you need us for, Eraserhead? Call me Aizawa. Or sensei. His gaze fell on Izuku. I was just checking on whether or not my new students got the help they needed to move in successfully. I was expecting All Might to be here, but since you're here, Midoriya, I can guess what happened. Yuku nodded, but then he realized something and said, wait, Aizawa-sensei, you know who I am. Aizawa stared at Izuku apathetically. Of course I do. It's not every day that you see someone break All Might's record in the entrance exam and get the highest score, so I tend to remember who it is when it does happen. Also, I'm going to be your homeroom teacher, so it's only natural for me to know your name. A beat passed. Momo screeched, eeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeee It was so embarrassing, it was so embarrassing, it was so embarrassing, the highest ranking student from the entrance exam, and she thought he was a mere errand boy. Her words from the day came crashing back to her, making her cheeks flush a delightful shade of red. Had she known he was going to be a student, just like her, she wouldn't have shown him such an immature side of her. Her geeking out over All Might would have been kept under wraps. Could she be blamed for thinking that talking with All Might's errand boy was just a chance, one-time meeting? No, absolutely not. For the sake of her family's name, pride, and honor, she had to rectify her mistake and patch her image up with Izuku. She got an on recommendation. She was supposed to be mature, dignified. She was supposed to be amongst the best UA had to offer, and the best behaved a certain way. Those values were instilled within her by her parents, and she wasn't about to let them down. She couldn't be outed for being a hero-obsessed geek before school had even begun. Yaoyorozu, are you alright? Izuku looked over at the still panicking Momo, who flushed an even darker shade of red. You kinda let out a weird noise. Why yep. Totally fine. Just gotta. She fumbled around for an excuse. Work brain, work. Go to the restroom all of a sudden, so please, excuse me. Without another word, she rushed into another room. Izuku was a bit confused since he was pretty sure that there was not, in fact, a bathroom in that room, but he could have been wrong. His attention suddenly snapped to Aizawa as the other man began talking. I just want to come out and say it, he said, checking around to make sure Momo was out of earshot. I'm not going to treat you differently because you're All Might's successor. Aizawa's voice was flat and as hard as steel. If I find you lacking, I will not hesitate to expel you. Izuku gulped, but then he looked Aizawa hard in the eye and said, I don't know what expectations you have of me, Aizawa-sensei, but I swear I'll not just meet them, I'll surpass them. Decent answer, the older man acquiesced. I specifically asked to be assigned as your homeroom teacher so I could judge, for myself, whether or not you're worthy of All Might's power. I, and Toshinori, have high expectations. Do not let us down. Izuku looked down at his closed palms. I still don't know if I deserve this power, but I will prove to you that I am worthy. Aizawa huffed. Mere semantics. With a wave, he took his leave, leaving behind a slightly shaken but no less determined Izuku. He was shaken slightly due to the sudden pressure placed on him to perform, but soon, that feeling dissolved into a fierce determination to prove to the world that he was worthy of one for all. He didn't know how much longer it'd take, but he would be able to take control of the Quirk in its entirety, at 100%. That was a promise he made himself. If he had to rely on his other unnamed Quirk to do so, then so be it. Little did he know, Momo was in the next corridor over, hiding behind a wall with her hands pressed against her mouth. She couldn't help but think she intruded upon something intensely private. It's just, the words All Might's successor caught her interest, and before she knew it, she was hiding and listening to their quiet conversation with a hastily constructed hearing aid. It was such a short conversation, but the implications of it. Just what the hell did that mean? Momo thought desperately to herself. Worthy of All Might's power. What, is All Might's quirk transferred or something? She'd never heard of such a quirk. It should be impossible to transfer power or quirks or whatever to another person. She must have misheard. Yup, she'll go with that. She misheard, and that conversation Izuku had with Aizawa was just a completely normal conversation devoid of earth-shattering revelations. In the slight off chance that she did actually hear them correctly, the very slight chance, the 0.00001% chance that she heard them correctly. No, it was impossible. I'll just keep a close eye on him, she decided mentally. Yeah, that was a good idea. She needed more information. You could just go up to him and ask, you know. One part of her brain argued. Okay, that was a poor idea already. She already exposed herself to him. She didn't have the guts to even look him in the face anymore after her folly. To just up and go ask him what being All Might's successor meant was just impossible. So, yeah, observing him it is, then. With a deep breath, Momo composed herself and, what are you doing? Momo outright screamed, causing the person who asked that question, poor Shoto, to jump back in surprise. In an instant, Izuku appeared before them, arcs of green electricity still leaping off of his frame. Are you alright? He asked sincerely, gazing at her with pure eyes. Momo instantly looked down and away from his eyes, fumbling to hide away the hearing aid and feeling herself blush madly in embarrassment. She wanted to die. She wanted to perish on the spot. She would have to add Todoroki to the growing list of people she showed an unseemly side of herself to. Her face rapidly overheating, she managed a soft, "Yes, I'm alright. Todoroki just caught me off guard." "Sorry," came the terse response. To his credit, Shoto looked genuinely apologetic, or, at least as apologetic one can look with such an impassive face. "Well, I'm glad you're alright," Izuku said, releasing his tension and settling back to normality. "Anyways, Yaoyorozu, we've still got roughly half of your stuff to unpack. Shall we get to it?" "Why yes, of course." She smiled politely at him, but didn't quite meet him in the eye. Over the course of the next hour, Izuku returned to helping Momo move things up and set up her room. Though, something about the way she was acting was slightly off-putting. Ever since their encounter with Aizawa, she had been oddly quiet. Gone was the excitable girl spouting all-might facts, and in its stead, Momo Yaoyorozu, the prim, proper beauty, remained. It was a shame, really. He had liked the Yaoyorozu that seemed to be super into heroes. This polite Yaoyorozu kept him incessantly on edge. But, no matter. She was going to be a classmate, so Izuku would like to be friends with her. Same with Todoroki. Izuku was fine with being a loner, as he had been throughout all of high school, but now, he wanted to change. He wanted to have people he could call friends. Himiko had been the primary reason for his newfound thinking. She showed him that human interaction didn't have to just be the bullies and the bullied. She showed him that, beyond family members, people could be friends, could be something more. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, Izuku stood in a now boxless common room with Shoto and Momo. Shoto had come downstairs to bid Izuku goodbye and thank you, bowing slightly, a gesture which Izuku promptly returned. "Don't worry about it," Izuku said. After a moment of hesitation, Momo shyly added, "I look forward to being in the same class this year, Midoriya. Thank you so much for your help." To Shoto's credit, he didn't look surprised when Momo dropped that bombshell. He only raised a single eyebrow before looking at Izuku and saying, "Likewise." His reaction was such a far cry from Momo's cute shriek that Izuku couldn't help but inwardly chuckle. "Well, see you guys soon. I'm heading home now." "Goodbye," Shoto and Momo chorused, waving goodbye as Izuku left the building. As soon as he left, Shoto excused himself, leaving Momo all alone in the common room, where she promptly collapsed onto her knees. This, she thought, has been an exhausting day. Mom. Moom. What's the matter, Izuku? Inko Midoriya said, coming into the living room. Izuku sat on the couch clutching a letter-shaped envelope. "It's here," Izuku said cryptically. "Honey, what's here?" She froze when she recognized the seal on the envelope. UA. University, the foremost college for all things heroics. Her blood ran cold. "Mom, I'm sorry that I didn't tell you this sooner." Izuku took a deep breath, glad to be free of the burden of keeping a secret from his beloved mother. "I didn't apply to Aldera High's affiliated college. I've been training, all the time that I've gone out for the past few years, to take the entrance exam for UA. And not the general course. I applied for the heroics course." Inko could only laugh weakly. "And with what quirks, dear?" "I remember how pained you were when the doctor said that you were." "But I'm not, Mom," Izuku said patiently. "I'm not quirkless." Inko remained silent. Her fears, the ones she held for all these years, rose to the forefront. What quirks do you have, then?" "Chrono Force, Regenerator, Electromagneta, Hydro Cannon, King's Will, and so many more to the point that she'd forgotten all of them. That monster that tried to make her baby into a monster of his own. The police said that they locked away his latent powers by suppressing them behind a fog of partial amnesia, but what if that wasn't enough? What if his powers, along with his influence and the memories of the atrocities they forced her son to commit all came back? To Izuku's credit, he didn't seem to notice that she referred to quirks as plural. But her fears were rendered partially null by the story her son told her. He told her of All Might, and One for All, and Blackwhip, and the yet unnamed third quirk of his. All of this talk made her feel relieved that no, her son was not getting his memory of that horrible time back, but her fears temporarily resurfaced when he talked about the unnamed quirk. It sounded like Chrono Force or Regenerator had appeared in his son without him having memory of how he got it. Oh God. Inko was beside herself with worry. If he remembered that time, she wasn't worried about him regaining use of the monstrous quirks he'd been given. No, she was worried that he'd remember what he did with them. The police said he couldn't take the blame for his actions simply because it was obvious that he was being forced and acted largely in self-defense, but Inko knew that her little Izuku could never forgive himself if he knew what actually happened to those children. What he did to them. Anyways, well, Izuku paused, not noticing his mother currently lost in her thoughts due to his nervousness. This is the notification from UA. He ripped open the letter and selected the play button from the device he unsheathed from its remains. I am here as a projection. Instantly a fully muscled out All Might popped up in the air, wearing the UA colors. Having been a teacher at UA for several years by now, it made sense that he was wearing the school colors, but Izuku wanted to see All Might in his proper hero costume. Hi, All Might. Izuku responded. As this is a pre-recorded message, please do not do something as foolish as greeting me back. Ahahahahahahaha. Izuku flushed in embarrassment while his evidently still lost in thought mother only let out a chuckle in response. Young man, I will make this short since you already know the results of the exam. I don't know what fool told you before the exam results came out though. Ahahaha. Izuku held back a facepalm at his mentor's antics. Anywho, you passed the written exam with only one wrong in the entire exam. Very impressive, but you should brush up on your theoretical mathematics. You still got the highest score, tied with one Tenya Iida. He coughed a bit of blood, alarming both Izuku and Inko, before continuing. As for the practical exam, well, I'll just let the results speak for themselves. All Might turned the camera to a scoreboard of sorts, comprising of names and 2 additional categories for points, villain and rescue. It read, 10, Yosetsu Awase, villain points, 50, rescue points, 6. 9, Fumikage Tokiyami, villain points, 47, rescue points, 10. 8, Tetsu, villain points, 49, rescue points, 10. 7, Tenya Iida, villain points, 52, rescue points, 9. 6, Itsuka Kendo, villain points, 25, rescue points, 40. 5, Abara Shiozaki, villain points, 36, rescue points, 32. 4, Ochako Uraraka, villain points, 32, rescue points, 45. 3, Eijiro Kirishima, villain points, 39, rescue points, 39. 2, Katsuki Bakugo, villain points, 88, rescue points, 0. 1, Izuku Midoriya, villain points, 156, rescue points, 102. Izuku gaped at the number of rescue points and at the huge jump of points from second to first place. The villain points were to be expected, but he never expected his rescue points, whatever they were, to be that high. As if sensing his feelings, All Might quickly said, highest in both villain and rescue points for a total of 258 points. The former is to be expected, but the latter shows that you are truly special. We had a whole extra team of judges watching purely for one thing, laying your life on the line and saving other people. What kind of hero course would we be if we didn't acknowledge true heroism? That made sense. All Might continued, you saved people without a second thought. It was like watching a well-oiled machine. You blended helping others perfectly with taking villains down. That is the true quality we are looking for in a hero, and you've got it in spades. On screen, All Might held out a hand. Welcome to your Hero Academia. Even though he'd known about it for a few days now, hearing All Might welcome him made Izuku tear up again. Wrought with emotion, the boy wiped at his eyes with the back of his palm, struggling to keep his countenance calm. On the other hand, Inko could only look at her son with worry. She didn't dare bring up what happened all those years ago. Doing so, she was warned by the doctors and specialists, could trigger unwanted memories. But, she had to make sure. Izuku, she started slowly, are you sure that this is what you want? Izuku looked at his mother. In those evergreen eyes of his, she could only see fierce, unwavering determination behind a thin veil of tears. Yes, Mom. And I'm not just going to become a hero. His eyes narrowed. I'm going to become the best hero there ever was. Izuku Midoriya stood in a glass room. The faceless man in the dark suit stood beside him while a researcher clad in a lab coat pointed something at him. Oh, it was a gun. Considerably rarer these days ever since the advent of quirks, but they were still around. Izuku knew that since, well, he'd been shot by it, 45, 46 times by now. That sounded right. All wounds had been quickly healed, though, by a combination of regenerator and chrono force, was it? He couldn't exactly remember. Now remember what we discussed, the suited man said. The other people behind the glass wall scurried about in their lab coats doing whatever it was that kept them so busy. Izuku couldn't care less. Visualize opposites. There had been a long, complex speech about how he should be able to utilize this quirk he was given. Something about electromagnetic fields, something about positive and negative charges, something about negating forces, yada yada yada. He'd forgotten the vast majority of it within minutes. All he knew was this man had shot him 46 times, and he was getting hungry. Ready? The faceless man beside him asked. This man was good, Izuku deemed. This one gave him food. In all his days spent here, this faceless man always brought him food if he surpassed expectations. Izuku nodded. The gun fired, but the bullet never hit him. Instead, it was hovering, mid-air, 1 inch away from Izuku's flexed hand. He didn't know how exactly he did it, maybe something about the way he'd flexed his hands. The bullet vibrated and hummed with unspent kinetic energy, and Izuku and the faceless man marveled at it for a moment. The people in the lab around them cheered, though it looked like slow motion from where he was standing. But the bullet, it still had to go somewhere. He could feel the bullet protesting its temporary confinement. And so, he simply reversed the charges. How he did it, he did not know. Green electricity crackled in the air around Izuku, and the bullet, faced with an overwhelming negative charge, shot back into the direction from whence it came. The bombastic sound of a near supersonic boom. The crinkling sound of shattering glass. The sound of an object piercing, no, obliterating flesh. A deafening silence reigned in the room, now joined to the outside laboratory by a massive, gaping hole in the glass wall. The bloody remains of the researcher sprawled out on the ground did not affect Izuku in the slightest. The fact that he was completely missing a portion of his upper body from where Izuku had shot him was actually amusing to Izuku. Yes, it was amusing. The man who had shot him so many times, reduced to paste when shot once in return. Izuku began giggling, unnerving the wide-eyed researchers. Some even had the urge to charge at the boy, to beat him for daring to kill one of their own, but they were silenced by the slow clapping of the man in the suit. Fantastic, simply fantastic. The faceless man applauded. Never once did I think that this quirk could be used offensively. Very creative, Izuku. The man patted him on his head. Izuku looked up at the man. Does this mean food? Yes, yes, of course. A feast, full of your favorites. Ah, good. That's what Izuku liked to hear. Of course, this was a memory long forgotten. Unbreakable. Moving in. Getting his teary-eyed mom to let him leave was a task easier said than done. Of course Izuku was tearing up a bit too, but he had to put on his manly face and show, for his mom's sake, that he'd be alright. With many promises of calling and visiting home frequently, he left their homely apartment and departed for UA University, luggage in tow. The bulk of the moving in had already been done by moving companies, so all Izuku had to bring were his clothes and toiletries. His room had been fairly plain, with his hero memorabilia and desktop computer being the only things of actual value. Plus, if he needed more clothes, he could just visit home and grab some. The campus was a fairly short train ride away, so it wouldn't be some mammoth undertaking if he wanted to visit home. Sitting on the train, Izuku felt excited for what was to come. Not only was he going to college, he was going to UA University. He had gotten slightly used to the idea, but in the end, a small part of him still couldn't believe that his dream was slowly becoming a reality. It was a wonderful feeling, all in all. After a couple minutes, the train stopped and he hopped off, wheeling the suitcase behind him. It was only a short walk before he began to see other students, rolling their suitcases or carrying last-minute add-ons for their dorms, walking towards the campus. Some of them were with their parents, a sight which made Izuku smile to himself. Inko had originally wanted to accompany her son to his move-in day, but Izuku quickly dismissed that idea. He, and she, both knew that she'd just end up bawling her eyes out the entire time, and Izuku didn't have much confidence that he wouldn't cry either. She had been placated with hundreds of promises to FaceTime and visit as soon as he had free time, and that had been that. He stopped on the threshold of UA University's campus, taking a deep breath before stepping through. Sure, Izuku had been here multiple times before, but this time just felt different. He was finally here as a student, he finally belonged here. He walked past the crowd of general course students and made his way to his dorm building. The giant, H-shaped building loomed over him, tall and magnificent, and he spotted a few of his future classmates loitering about the common room as he walked through. He waved at them, smiling, earning a few hellos back, but he didn't stay to chat as he ascended the stairs to his room. He passed by Todoroki on the way up, and the two greeted each other. When he was on the second floor, he hopped off the staircase only to come face to face with Katsuki Bakugo in one of his classic black tank tops. The two stared at each other. Like a deer caught in headlights, the two neither said anything or moved. A beat passed like this, before Izuku uneasily said, "So, Bakugo, looks like we'll be neighbors." Yeah, Katsuki scratched at his neck. The two stood there, and stood there, and stood there. I'll be going then. Izuku walked by Katsuki to reach his room, but he was stopped by a hand. Katsuki swallowed heavily, not making eye contact with Izuku, just wanted to say congrats. On placing first in the entrance exam, I mean. Oh, that had been a surprise. Thanks, Izuku said, not quite sure of what else to say. But, Katsuki suddenly roared, grabbing the front of his shirt. I'm going to surpass you, Deku, so that I can protect. Forget that, it was a cheesy line anyways. Enjoy your stay on the throne while it lasts. Without another word, he let go and stalked away, heading down the steps. Izuku, letting out a sigh of relief, continued to his room. Living next door to Katsuki was going to be interesting. While the days of the bully Katsuki were long gone, he still wasn't the most pleasant person to be around. But it had been genuinely surprising to hear Katsuki congratulate him. He wasn't one to admit inferiority easily. He opened the door to his room, and the somewhat plain interior greeted him. The massive wall of All Might merch gazed down at him, but he wasn't bothered by it in the slightest. Izuku set about transferring his stuff from his luggage to the dresser located in the corner of his room, taking the time to fold his clothes rather than just throwing them in. The process took somewhere close to half an hour, only because he was so insistent on everything being neat and tidy, but he was interrupted near the end of it by a polite knock on his door. Izuku walked over, opening it and asking, "Yes." In front of him stood a tall, rigid-looking man. He looked somewhat familiar, but Izuku couldn't exactly place just where he'd seen him. Maybe at the entrance exam. The man seemed to recognize him. "Oh. You're the one that was murmuring to himself throughout all of Present Mike's opening speech." Me. Izuku realized where he had seen the man before. This guy had called him out during Present Mike's opener. "Oh, yeah." The man stiffly bowed at a 90-degree angle. "I would like to formally apologize for my transgression on the day of the entrance exam. I was judging you even before I knew you, and that is." "Ooh-ah," Izuku cried out, flailing his arms at the taller man. "No need to apologize. It's perfectly okay, I was the one distracting everyone." The man peered up at him through the lens of his glasses. "If you say so. Still, I am sorry." He unbent himself, straightening out, before saying, "My name is Tenya Iida. I look forward to our years together at UA." That got an easy grin out of Izuku. "Likewise. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Pleasure to meet you." Tenya's eyes widened slightly. Izuku Midoriya, the guy who scored 258 points on the entrance exam, tripling the second-place score and breaking the school record for most points ever earned on an UA entrance exam. The knowledge wasn't privy to a lot of people. The most that knew about it, Tenya guessed, were the other 9 top 10 examinees and the teachers, or else the school would have been swamped by the papers and tabloids looking for the one that broke All Might's record. Tenya cleared his throat. "Anyways, I was thinking of holding a get-together in the common room for all the members of Class 1A. I've already told the others about it on their way up, but I wasn't able to catch you, so I think you're amongst the last people to be notified about it. Would you like to come down for the meeting?" Izuku nodded eagerly. "Yes, I would. Thanks for getting me, by the way." "No problem." The two left the room and descended the stairs to the common room. There, already, were tons of people. He saw a few familiar faces, including the one gravity girl he'd run into and talked to briefly during the entrance exam. She was beaming and chatting it up with empty space. Closer inspection of the scene revealed a floating t-shirt and skirt. An invisibility quirk. Cool, Izuku thought. He spotted an annoyed-looking Katsuki responding to an energetic, red-haired man's attempts at conversation, and to the left of them, in a large group of girls, he saw Momo. When he saw that he caught her glance, he smiled and waved, but that only earned a faint blush and an instant look away. That reaction was odd. Everyone, Tenya called, shushing the gathered people there. He did a quick head count, stopping at 20 before nodding contentedly. Now that we're all here, I thought that we should all take this opportunity to introduce ourselves. These are the classmates that we'll be working together with this school year, so I'd like to get acquainted. With no verbal objections, he continued, since I suggested the idea, I will go first. Hello, everyone, my name is Tenya Iida. My quirk is called Engine. It gives me these things, he pointed down at his exposed calves, revealing engine-like protrusions that allow me to move very fast. I drink orange juice to fuel it. A polite smattering of applause sounded throughout the room. With Tenya finished, they all waited for the next person to speak. It seemed no one wanted to step up, which left a slightly awkward and strained atmosphere. Silence. Yuku, unable to take the tension anymore, whispered to Tenya, how about we go around in a circle, starting to your right. Tenya looked at him, nodding. He said loudly, how about we start introducing ourselves in a circle. You can go next. He gestured at a blonde, foreign-looking student. Caught off guard but visibly unperturbed by the attention on him, he bowed slightly before introducing himself. Bonjour. Je m'appelle, my name is Yuga Aoyama. My quirk is called Naval Laser, and it allows me to fire. Introductions went on like this for some time. Due to his position on Tenya's left, Izuku was glad to have time to think about his introduction and what he would say. He couldn't exactly come out with the truth, after all. It may or may not cause a ruckus if he said he had All Might's quirk. Still, he paid attention to what his classmates were saying. They were gonna spend a year together, so Izuku wanted to get to know them. Yuga Aoyama, quirk, Naval Laser. He seemed slightly aloof and flamboyant to some degree, and he could shoot powerful lasers out of his belly. If he fires too much, he ends up with a severe bellyache. Eijiro Kirishima, quirk, Hardening. A very simple but useful quirk, similar to Izuku's unknown third quirk but not exactly the same. His appeared to be more physical, and it was more visibly obvious when he was using it. He was the guy he saw talking to Katsuki earlier. Katsuki Bakugo, quirk, Explosion. Nothing new to be learned here, just that even he seemed oddly invested into learning about his future classmates. Scouting the competition or just genuine interest, Izuku didn't know. Denki Kaminari, quirk, Electrification. He seemed to be able to generate electricity and cover his body with it, or he could shoot it out a certain distance. He had little control of it, though. For some reason, there was a prickling in the back of his mind when hearing about this quirk. Izuku pondered upon why that was so, nearly missing the next explanation. Koji Koda, quirk, Anavoice. Apparently, he could communicate with animals. He didn't say anything beyond that, though, meekly sitting back down after his quick introduction. Rikido Sato, quirk, Sugar Rush. When activated, his quirk allowed him to increase his strength by 5-fold, but he needed a small amount of sugar. Izuku was highly interested in hearing about his quirk, since wasn't one for all a strength increase, too. Except in this case, he was drawing upon a stockpile of accumulated power. That was the difference between the two, Izuku guessed. Mezzo Shoji, quirk, Dupli Arms. He could transform the tips of the 6 tentacle-like appendages attached to his body into other body parts, like ears, mouths, or noses. The duped body parts are much more effective than the original, up to 10 times better, in fact. Izuku initially thought he looked menacing, but from the way that he talked, Izuku could tell he was a sweet guy. There was a certain softness in his speech and tone. Ochako Uraraka, quirk, Zero Gravity. She was the girl he'd seen at the entrance exam levitating robots and smashing them down. Her quirk allows her to cancel the effects of gravity on anything she touches with her fingers, but if she does too much, she admitted, she gets an urge to throw up. She caught his eye as she said that, turning a light shade of red upon recognizing him. That explains the sight he saw at the entrance exam. Suyu Asui, Quirk, frog. Her appearance suited her Quirk, with dark green hair and a wide mouth which drooped down a little in the middle. Izuku thought the features she had looked cute, but upon further reflection, weren't all of his female classmates either cute or beauties. That didn't matter that much to him, though. He had Himiko. His face went into a fiery red blush as he considered, for a second, just what he thought. He reeled his mind in and listened to the other introductions. Toru Hagakuri, Quirk, invisibility. The invisible girl that he spotted earlier, as odd as that sounds. A fairly straightforward quirk that revolved around light manipulation. Apparently she looked like a combination of Yang Gaifei and Francis Xavier. Izuku carefully thought about what that would look like before giving up entirely. Mina Ishido, Quirk, acid. She could generate acids from her body, controlling the concentration and viscosity of it. It was interesting to hear that she loved to dance, even breaking out a few dance moves on the spot. Her movements were fluid, precise, and Izuku knew right then and there she would be a fearsome hand-to-hand combatant. Kyoka Jiro, Quirk, earphone jack. Extending her earlobes, she described her quirk using a physical demonstration, crouching down and jamming it into the floor. This way, she explained, she could hear footsteps up to 100 or so meters around. Next was someone he knew already. I'm Momo Yaoyorozu. It's a pleasure to meet you all, she said politely. My quirk, creation, allows me to create non-living material from my exposed skin, but I have to know the molecular structure of the object I want to create. Also, when I create things, I draw upon my body's supply of lipids in order to do so. No fair Tilda, Mina said playfully, surprise hugging Momo from behind. Is that the secret to this rocking bod of yours? You just get to burn off fat by naturally using your quirk, a natural enemy of us normal girls who have to work out, sniff sniff. Momo, who had let out an eep sound at suddenly being hugged like that, quickly said. Well, if I use it too much, I can become anemic. Nice to meet you, Yaoyorozu. I'm Minoru Mineta, said a short boy with purple balls on his head. He evidently could not contain himself anymore, seeing as to how he rushed to Momo's side. Can I just come out and say it? You are stunningly beautiful, and it would be a shame if you were to become anemic. I could just say that. The boy went on and on after that, blissfully ignorant of how uncomfortable Momo seemed. Izuku, catching her eye for a split second and looking at her embarrassed expression, made a decision and went with it. Mineta, Izuku began, getting his attention, maybe wait until after the introductions are done before resuming your conversation with Yaoyorozu. Mineta didn't even seem fazed. Looking back at Izuku, he grinned slyly. Why, are you jealous? You snooze, you lose, buddy boy. Katsuki let out a sharp peal of laughter at that comment. Izuku turned to look at the blonde, who was setting off mini explosions in his palms. Humor, but, you wanna fucking die, rat. Katsuki said callously. Shut the fuck up and let's continue. The whole room was cowed by Katsuki's brusque manner, but they didn't have the heart to disagree with what he said. Mineta had been grating on just about everyone's nerves. Let's move on, Tenya said diplomatically, causing Katsuki to grunt in response and a visibly frightened Mineta to squeak out an affirmative. Next up was Mashirao Ojiro, Quirk, tail. He laughed good-naturedly, and he said, I don't have any fun facts about it or anything. I've just got a tail, and that's good enough for me. He didn't seem embarrassed in the slightest, just apologetic that he didn't have anything more to say about his quirk. Hanta Siro, Quirk, tape. His quirk was like the old American superhero Spider-Man. He could swing around on the tapes and capture things with them, but it came at a cost. Using his quirk causes his skin to dry out. That's why, he said half-jokingly, his biggest purchase every month was bottles of lotion. Fumikage Tokiyami, Quirk, Dark Shadow. Fumikage's quirk was one of those rare sentient quirks. The personality and strength of his quirk directly depends on the amount of light there is, or rather, the lack of it. In complete daytime, his quirk was very well behaved and listened to him, but on the darkest nights, he trailed off, letting everyone imagine for themselves. Shoto Todoroki, Quirk, half cold half hot. True to the name, his quirk allowed him to generate ice from the right side of his body and flames from the left side. He favored using his right side, but Shoto said he wouldn't hesitate using his left side if absolutely necessary. With Shoto's short and succinct introduction done, all eyes fell on Izuku. Swallowing in an attempt to calm his nerves, he decided to go with what he thought up and spoke. "Hi everyone, I'm Izuku Midoriya." He noticed looks of realization pass through a couple faces in the room. Unfazed, he pressed on. "My quirk grants me extra strength and speed along with," he manifested 3 strands of black whip, letting them wriggle about. That's all." Silence reigned strong over the room. "You're Izuku Midoriya," Eijiro Kirishima bellowed, making the people around him jump slightly in surprise. Katsuki just covered his ear with one hand, though. As in, 258 points on the entrance exam. Izuku Midoriya. That hadn't been the reaction Izuku wanted. He dimly remembered seeing Eijiro's name on the top 10 list, meaning that he was privy to such knowledge. Not that he wanted to hide it, of course, but Izuku also didn't need people broadcasting that fact to the whole world. Honestly, he could do without the extra attention that it placed on him. He was simply content to beat All Might's record and didn't know that it was apparently such a big deal. But, oh well, he wasn't ashamed of it, so Izuku decided to own up to it. "Yup, that's me." There was a hint of resignation still present in his tone, though. "Dude, that's so manly." Eijiro cheered, energetically jumping off of his seat and bouncing over to Izuku. "Can I shake your hand?" "I'm gonna shake your hand." Eijiro grabbed his hand with 2 of his and shook it enthusiastically. Izuku could tell that there weren't any ill feelings coming off of the young man, but as he thought before, he could really do without the extra attention on him. Now the vast majority of his class were staring at him, wide-eyed, save for a select few. He dimly wondered if this was the pressure All Might faced. Everyone always constantly watching, being placed on a pedestal to be held above everyone else. But this wasn't even close to the amount of attention and pressure that All Might undoubtedly faced. If Izuku was really going to succeed All Might, he would be facing this type of attention every day multiplied by like a gazillion. This early attention, he decided, would be good training for such a future. That didn't mean Izuku had to like it, though. "But, dude, you're holding out on us. Tell us more about your quirk." "This is training for the day when I become a pro hero," Izuku reminded himself, stealing his nerves. "This is training. ... At the end of it all, Izuku was drained physically, mentally, and emotionally. Eijiro blurting out his entrance exam score triggered an avalanche of questions from curious classmates. Since Izuku didn't want to be rude and off-putting to his classmates before their first official day together even began, he tried his best at answering each and every single one of them without giving away too much. Ultimately, he was glad that he wasn't being teased or harassed by his future classmates. Although some questions were invasive in content, he could tell that it didn't come from a place of ill will. His classmates were just genuinely curious people. His attempts at drawing away attention from his quirk were laughable at best and suspicious at worst. When asked to further explain his quirk to them, Izuku had replied, I can just power up and go, you know." Thinking about it now made him want to cry. Also, Katsuki had the most indescribable expression on his face. He looked like he was furious, wanted to ask him questions as well, and relieved, all mixed into one look. He didn't participate in the question asking, though. Mercifully, his torture ended by the grace of a goddess. Momo Yaoyorozu, bless her saintly heart, noticed the time and suggested that they end the questioning for today and turn in early to get ready for their first day of school tomorrow. Izuku had wanted to thank her, but she had disappeared into the girls' section of the dorms before he could single her out. He sighed. His classmates definitely seemed like a raucous, rowdy bunch full of varying personalities. But they were the people he was going to spend a whole school year with, so he hoped that he'd made a good impression on them. As the sky darkened and became night, Izuku showered at the end of the hall bathroom and, thankfully not bumping into anyone on his way to and from his shower, he managed to get back into his room uninterrupted. As he got changed into his sleepwear, a simple pair of loose-hanging boxers and white t-shirt, he checked his phone and was mildly surprised that he got a text from Himiko. It had been sent somewhat recently, so she must have sent it while he was showering. Himiko. Izu. Himiko. Tell me which dorm you are in. Himiko. And which room. Himiko. Please. Smiling to himself, Izuku decided to humor her strange request. Izuku, it's the one that says 1A Alliance on the front of it. I'm room 203. Izuku, why do you ask, though? It took barely a second before the response came. Himiko. Good. Himiko. OMW. Confused by what OMW meant, Izuku decided to look it up. Was it a typo or something? Apparently, the OMW was an acronym for on my way, but that simply didn't make sense. Tack. The sound came from his window. Intrigued, Izuku walked to it and saw Himiko waving at him happily from the ground. What? His brain froze for a moment, crashed, and then rebooted. Then crashed again. His phone rung in his hand. Incoming call from Himiko Toga, it read. With shaky fingers, he accepted the call. Izu tilde, Himiko's sweet tone came through his phone. Are you going to invite me in? Or am I going to freeze out here? Himiko. What are you doing out there? Her voice tickled his ears. Coming to see you, of course. Izuku stayed silent for a second, not trusting himself to speak. Swallowing thickly, he finally said, but, isn't there a rule against this? Isn't there? Nope, none at all. Izuku, Himiko all but whined, it's cold out here tilde. Izuku gulped. I'll come get you. A part of him burned in embarrassment, but another part of him was thrilled at the potential prospect of having Himiko in his room, alone. He hung up the phone, and, steeling his nerves, put on a pair of shorts and walked out of his room. Going silently down the stairs, he scoped out the area, realizing that there was noise coming from the kitchen. He poked his head around the corner, only to find Shoto Todoroki eating a bowl of cold soba. The heterochromatic boy noticed him and sheepishly put down the bowl that he'd just been slurping from. Oh, Midoriya, Shoto said. Todoroki. Izuku hurriedly amended, stepping fully out. What are you doing down here? Shoto looked down at his bowl of food. Eating soba. Ah, yes, but, Izuku frowned, but ultimately he decided to go on the offensive. Why now? Is also a question I'm asking, yeah. Shoto looked at him thoughtfully. Cold soba's my favorite food. Eating it helps me calm down. Oh, that's what this was about. Izuku was also nervous about the actual first day of school tomorrow, and seeing that even a person as seemingly unflappable as Shoto be nervous was enlightening to Izuku. Or, at least he hoped that that was what Shoto was worried about. I wish I had a comfort food like that, Izuku said honestly, and, yeah, I'm nervous about tomorrow, too, to be honest. I hope we both do great. You as well. He, Izuku chuckled, scratching the back of his neck, and if you need anything such as help, or you just need a friend, please don't hesitate to call on me. That got Shoto's full attention, and he looked at Izuku with that appraising look of his. After quite some time of mental consideration of some sort, Shoto said sincerely, thank you. No problem, Izuku smiled. Have a good night, Todoroki. As Shoto wished him the same, he realized he never asked why Izuku was down there in the first place. But as he thought of that, Izuku had already disappeared upstairs. Oh, well, Shoto thought, this soba isn't going to eat itself. Meanwhile, Izuku was dialing Himiko and rushing as quietly as he could back to his room. She picked up on the second ring and excitedly said, where are you, Izu? Got caught up downstairs, Izuku hurriedly explained. Voice still in a hushed whisper, he said, I've got another idea, though. Unlocking the door to his room, entering it, and locking it again, Izuku set about to bring his plan to fruition. He went to the large window in his room and opened it fully. A human should be able to fit through, no problem. Look back at the window, Izuku instructed, waving at Himiko. Down there, he saw Himiko look up and grin at him. Okay, now just hold on a sec. Concentrating for a moment, he fired 4 strands of black whip down towards Himiko. They reached her easily, even from their distance of about 25 feet. Do you trust me? He said into the phone. Yes, Himiko said instantly, flashing him a thumbs up. With a nod, Izuku willed the individual strands of black whip to curl securely around Himiko. Once he was confident that he had a tight grip on her, he recollected the strands of black whip. The pitch-black tendrils raced back to their master, bringing a laughing Himiko up with them. He slowed down when she was just right outside his room, bringing her gently inside and setting her down with care before shutting the window softly and sucking the strands of black whip back into his body. And, just like that, Himiko was in his room. Alone. With no adult supervision. "Hi," he said shyly and quietly, setting down his phone. He drank in her appearance. Dressed in a green hoodie, one of his, he noticed, and dark sweats, she still looked no less beautiful than when she was fully dressed up for one of their fancy dinner rendezvous. Dimly, Izuku was aware of his face heating up. "Hi there yourself. I was lucky that I got your window on the first try," she laughed breathlessly. "Why yeah. Welcome to my room." He gestured around awkwardly. Himiko giggled. "It's about as fanboyish as I imagined it would be." She eyed the wall of All Might merch, frowning so quickly that Izuku thought it was a trick of the light. "Well, it'll be my home for the year." He watched with bated breath as Himiko languidly walked over to his bed and asked, "Do you mind if I lie on this?" "And no, not at all." She kicked off her tennis shoes and yawned, throwing her arms back and pushing out her chest. That act made Izuku's throat go dry, and Himiko, as if she knew of the effect she had on him, grinned up at him and finally laid down, grabbing Izuku's pillow and holding it like it was a dakimakura. Izuku took a brief moment to appreciate the sight before him. Himiko was curled up around his pillow, hugging it with her arms and legs, and her hair splayed out like a halo around her head. Her golden eyes looked lazily up at him, her gaze warm and inviting, as if she was trying to entice him. Unsure of what to do, Izuku sat down at his desk chair, keeping his eyes on the picturesque scene before him. Himiko looked like a comfy kitten playing with a ball of yarn or something. It was kinda hard for Izuku to think of ways to describe just how cute and alluring Himiko looked at the moment. Himiko made a happy noise in the back of her throat. "Your room is nice. It's bigger than mine." "Oh," Izuku said, surprised, "I thought the buildings were the same size." "You'd think so, right?" Himiko laughed to herself. "But, no, my room is noticeably smaller. Probably has something to do with them valuing the potential hero students more than the general course's students." Izuku frowned. "Well, that's wrong of them. UA should value them equally." Himiko hummed, squeezing the pillow closer to herself. "They should, but they don't. They're much too preoccupied with the rearing of future heroes." To that, Izuku had no counter. Heroes, villains, good, bad, just designations made by society. All I see are people using their quirks for violence. She spoke the last word vehemently. A silence settled in the room, and a dark look crossed Himiko's face. She said quietly, "But ultimately I'm just a big fat hypocrite." "No, you're not," Izuku admonished strongly. "You're like, the least violent person I know. If you were violent, you would have attacked me for my blood all those years ago." Himiko looked like she wanted to counter, but she kept her mouth shut. "But I did essentially attack you," she wanted to say, but she knew Izuku would find some sort of way to refute that. And with that, she bit back a lot more, unsavory and unnecessary things that Izuku did not need to know about. Ever. "Liking to drink blood doesn't make you violent," Izuku explained, "and it's just a craving related to your quirk. One that I'll help you out with for as long as you'll have me." She looked up at him, the previous dark look all but replaced by a look of pure affection. "You don't have any idea how much those words mean to me." Hey, Izuku said, growing embarrassed. "I'm sure that anybody else would say and do the same thing." "But no one else has, Izuku," Himiko interrupted him, "no one else has come even close to offering their blood to me willingly. And, besides, it's always been you." Her eyes seemed unfocused, as if she were lost in a memory. "Ah, Himiko. It can only ever be you," Himiko emphasized, getting off of his bed. She walked towards him in the manner a predator stalks its prey, a look of raw hunger and unbridled need in her eyes. Frozen in his chair, Izuku didn't dare make a noise as Himiko walked toward him, until Himiko threw her arms around his neck and sat in his lap. It was then that Izuku made an eep sound. "Can I?" She asked for permission in a low tone, and Izuku bit his lip and nodded, shutting his eyes at their close proximity. Relaxing his neck and deactivating his unknown quirk, he waited for Himiko to bite into his neck. It was a regular enough occurrence that he knew what pain to expect, but he could never get used to the sheer closeness and intimacy of the act. But the bite never came. The pain never surfaced. All he felt was a pair of lips gently caressing his own. Izuku's eyes shot open to find Himiko, eyes shut, much closer than he anticipated. She broke off their chaste kiss and slowly opened her eyes, grinning triumphantly. Sorry, I couldn't resist. You just looked too cute, Izu tilde. Izuku didn't doubt that his face looked like a ripe tomato right about now. He struggled to speak, but he found himself crushed under the sheer enormity of the act that they'd just committed. All he could say was, that was my first kiss. His eyes focused on anything not Himiko. Are you sad that I took it? Himiko asked, a bit of worry laced into her tone and expression. All traces of it were wiped away by what Izuku said next, however. No, I'm glad that it was you, actually, he finished meekly, embarrassed out of his mind. If he had been looking at Himiko, he would have noticed her face blossom into red, matching his face, and a giddy smile form. He's too cute, Himiko decided. Too cute. And all mine. 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 Am I? Whoops. Himiko wiped off the manic grin she knew was on her face. Luckily, her Izuku wasn't looking at her just yet. She just couldn't help it. He was too adorable, and having him here in her arms did poor things to her mental state. Thank you for the meal, Izu, she whispered directly into his ear, loving how he shuddered and writhed underneath her. Himiko moved her mouth close to the pulse point on his neck. Now time for the dessert tilde. ... Geez, trouble sleeping, huh, Midoriya? Izuku gazed at the person eating breakfast next to him. Rikido Sato gazed at him, concerned. The gentle giant had taken it upon himself to cook breakfast for everyone, waking up before the crack of dawn in order to do so. While the breakfast mainly consisted of sweets full of sugar, 1A had appreciated it nonetheless. Why yeah, Izuku sighed, I guess you can say that. So even the manliest of us all gets the heebie-jeebies before the first day of class, the redhead Eijiro said. Figures. I'm a bit nervous, too. Well, Izuku wanted to say, it's not just that. After Himiko finished her dessert, she gave him a flutter of kisses along his neck before entangling herself from him. She stayed and chatted for a while more, leading Izuku to figure out she was in class 1C. With a demand to visit her at her dorm when he had the chance and to eat lunch with her tomorrow, Himiko left, taking Izuku's express black whip down to the ground from his window. That left Izuku alone, and very, very on edge. He couldn't even escape his thoughts by falling asleep. Replays of the memory of Himiko's lips on his kept him awake all night. The kiss had been chaste, no crazy tongue action involved, but, still. Even thinking about it now set his heart beating abnormally fast and his face aflame. How soft her lips were, how tender her kiss was, it was all just so awesome. He kissed a girl. Well, to be fair, a girl kissed him, but that was mere semantics at this point. And a girl as beautiful, cute, pretty, and hot as Himiko at that. That fact alone set his pride, his ego, his psyche roaring in delight. Not to mention her scent lingered on his pillow after she was gone. Now that was a creepy thought, Izuku mentally berated himself. Yet he couldn't help but think, why him? Why would a girl as attractive as Himiko want anything to do with him? Sure, he treated her the best he physically and mentally could, but he was just, Izuku Midoriya, a boy with aspiring dreams of being the #1 hero. He had nothing concrete to his name, and yet. Whoa, you're really out of it, Midoriya. This time it had been, Kyoka Jiro. Izuku thought that was what her name was, the girl with earphone jacks in her ears, who had interrupted his self-deprecating train of thought. Why yeah, he laughed nervously, sorry. I didn't get much sleep last night. That makes 2 of us, she grumbled. Before Izuku could respond, a loud voice boomed throughout the entirety of the first floor. The first class starts in 30 minutes. Let's not be late on our first day together. Izuku recognized the voice as Tenya Iida, who must have been yelling at the top of his lungs. Crap, I've still got a pack. Midoriya, Kyoka clasped her hands together in a prayer motion, can you take this into the kitchen for me? She pointed at her plate. No problem, he replied, and with a grateful thanks Kyoka ran off. Wolfing down the remainder of his meal, Izuku stood up to bring his and Kyoka's plate into the kitchen. There, he found Momo dutifully washing the dishes and placing them in the dishwasher. Seeing that she was alone and still had a ton of plates to go through, he decided to join her, settling into place beside her. Momo didn't notice him until she naturally accepted a plate passed to her from Izuku. When she turned to see who the mysterious helper was and saw Izuku, of all people, standing beside her, she let out an unseemly yelp, making Izuku wince at the sudden loud voice. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see you there," Momo apologized, wanting to go and hide somewhere dark after the little screech she emitted. "No worries," Izuku said, "I shouldn't have snuck up on you like that, so it's my bad." "No, no, no," she dismissed, "it's my bad." Okay. A strained silence passed over the two of them. The only noise was the clinking of plates and silverware being passed and washed. Izuku truly did not know what to say. He wasn't a savant when it came to talking with girls, not even close, and he couldn't, for the life of him, come up with anything to say. Of course he could go with the classic, "So how about the weather?" but he'd rather go die in a ditch than say that evidently try-hard attempt at forcing a conversation to start. Momo, on the other hand, had too many questions, his quirk being the main focus of the vast majority of them, but didn't know if she even had the guts to ask them. She knew there was more to his quirk than just power up and go. She had seen a bit of it in action after all. What were those green tendrils of electricity swirling around him about? What's up with the thick ropes of pure darkness that he could conjure up? To what was the physical extent that he could power up? For what reason did he have to? Okay, pause, Momo. Take deep breaths. For a scary second there, the nerdy side to Momo nearly took over and asked Izuku those questions. It was just so curious. She couldn't help herself. First that overheard conversation between Izuku and Aizawa, then the physical demonstration when Izuku rushed to her side with inhuman speed, and then the sight of him all but summoning 3 strands of black energy, it all just made her so damn curious. If Momo didn't know any better, she'd think he had multiple quirks at his disposal. She chuckled to herself. Now that's a funny joke. First, inheriting quirks, now, multiple quirks in one person. Momo was coming up with crazy ideas nowadays. They finished up the dishes in a claustrophobic silence, with Izuku not knowing what to say and Momo having too much to say but holding herself back. When Momo stored away the last plate, Izuku said, "Okay, that's that. Are you packed for class?" "Yes," she answered, "and you?" Izuku nodded. Looking at the clock and noticing that there were only 15 minutes left until class started, he offered, "I think I'll head over to class now. Wanna walk together?" A polite smile appeared on Momo's face. "Well, yes, that'd be nice. Let me go grab my things." "Okay. I'll be waiting at the dorm's primary entrance." As he ran off, Momo took a moment to collect herself. It had been the first time a male had so directly invited her for anything, and she'd be lying if she said her heart had not skipped a beat at the nonchalant, easy way he invited her. It had been an experience she was lacking in. After all, she had gone to an all-girls school for her middle school and high school, so her contact with boys her age had been close to none. That had honestly been another reason she wanted to go to UA. Fame aside, she wanted the co-ed schooling experience. She wanted to be able to talk to guys her own age, not just creepy older men her parents set her up on arranged marriage interviews with. None of them had been successful so far, mostly due to Momo putting her foot down and declining every single one of them. Her parents knew that for a normally docile and obedient Momo to put her foot down and say no was a pretty big deal, and so she never heard of any follow-up meetings being arranged. She just had to mess things up with Izuku. Her own excitement at being able to talk to a boy her age, though, to be honest, she'd met Shoto Todoroki first, but the brief exchange they had barely counted for an actual interaction, had betrayed her in the end, and she'd gone overboard and off the rails, exposing too much of the side her parents had always deemed unseemly. But he hadn't outed her, yet. Her interactions with the rest of her classmates had gone well, and Momo thought she had done a good job of setting herself up as a dependable, reliable type of person. None of them seemed to know about the geeky side of hers, so she could assume Midoriya had kept his mouth shut. She was grateful for that, but Momo didn't have a way of comfortably broaching the subject with the boy. Oh well, she sighed. Things could be a lot worse. After retrieving her bag that she was using for class from her room, Momo met up with Izuku at the entrance to their dorm. He was waiting there with another boy, Tenya Iida, and Ochako Uraraka. "Hello," Momo greeted pleasantly, earning a chorus of hellos back. Let us be off, then. Tenya enthusiastically said. I made sure that everyone has already gone ahead of us, so we were just waiting on you, Yaoyorozu. Thank you for waiting for me. Momo bowed slightly, remembering the etiquette classes her parents made her attend. Izuku said cheerfully, no problem. The four lightly jogged to their first class, not wanting to be late on their first day. As they jogged, few words were spoken, and by the time they arrived outside of their classroom, there were 3 minutes remaining until class started. Izuku was surprised to find that it was assigned seating. He found his seat next to Katsuki Bakugo and Minoru Mineta. Oh boy, he thought, this is going to be an interesting year. As he walked towards his seat, his ears picked up the surrounding conversation. Dude, you're insane. Minoru Mineta shook his hands wildly. I'm telling you guys. I swear I saw a skeek blonde bid just floating outside of the window last night. A confused-looking Denki Kaminari responded, what, and what? An attractive blonde girl, deadpanned Minoru. Then, he spotted Izuku. Midoriya, did you see the girl of my dreams last night, too? What? Izuku asked, feigning surprise. His heart sunk in his chest as he realized the identity of the person Minoru was likely talking about. It seems like someone had spotted Himiko last night. Dude, I think you're tripping balls. No offense, Eijiro said apologetically. Katsuki let out a snort of laughter at that comment. No. I swear that I saw the perfect woman floating outside of my. If you're here to chit-chat about perfect women, sneered a sudden authoritative voice, I suggest you leave and go home. Izuku recognized that voice and promptly sat in his seat, not saying a single word. As people realized who had just spoken, they, too, ran and sat down in their seats, immediately shutting up. Izuku was immensely grateful for the distraction from Minoru's topic. I am Shota Aizawa and I will be your homeroom teacher for this year. 9 seconds, Aizawa-sensei said, scowling, it took you all 9 seconds to realize that I was here, to shut up, and to sit down. In the real world, 9 people could die in 9 seconds. The time you waste could make all the difference. Remember that. At his bone-chilling words, all the class could do was gulp and nod. Now is typically the time where you'd expect me to go through orientation and the like. Aizawa rubbed his eyes, and for the first time Izuku noticed that he seemed to be standing in a sleeping bag of some sort. He continued, but here at UA we do things differently. Get changed into these and meet me on the general use PE grounds. From inside his sleeping bag, he pulled out a box and unceremoniously dropped it on the floor before exiting the room. Mina Ishido, who sat in the front row, got out of her seat and opened it, revealing a bunch of blue and white track uniforms. Wow, they've got our sizes correct and our names on it, too, Mina breathed. She quickly distributed the tracksuits to their correct owner, never once asking for a name, and then she stopped and mulled over something. She hummed, growing a devilish smile. Girls change here, we kick the boys out, yeah. Immediately, Minoru protested, whoa. Why can't we all just be mature adults here and change together for the interest of time? Ochako suddenly appeared before him, smiling serenely. With an angelic expression, she tapped Minoru with all of her fingers, causing him to float, before brutally shoving his levitating weightless body through the open door. All they heard was a loud yelp, a few cuss words, and a meaty-sounding thud. Point taken, Denki said. See you ladies on the flip side. He quickly gathered his clothing and left the room, followed by a group of more or less equally shaken boys. Mina waved after them. Bye-bye Tilda. Hope you guys enjoyed first part of this story. Do like, share and subscribe.